Hi guys, uh, hope the audio is coming fine. Yeah, is the guys? Can you see me? I can't see myself in the YouTube video. Yeah, it seems fine. So good evening, guys. Thank you for joining the live stream. Today we are going to discuss Bengal, West Bengal's recent troubles, and all the stuff that's been happening from today morning. Some absolutely crazy things have happened, and if we get time after all the chat discussions and interactions, suggestions, and what we see as Indians, Bengalis, all mixed up together, NRIs, all of whom are in my comment section always. We are going to discuss how Bengal got here, what are the solutions, what are practical solutions, what are wishy-washy solutions, what are our wishful thinking solutions, all of them. And if we get time, we will watch a discussion between Sanjeev Sanyal, Swapan Dasgupta, Harsh Madhusudhan, and Rajiv Mantri. Okay, Rajiv Mantri is Harsh Madhusudhan's friend with whom he wrote that book, The Indian Renaissance or The Indian Decade or something. So the only problem with that video is that the audio of some of those speakers is too much of a low volume at some points, but Sanjeev Sanyal's voice is clear pretty much the entire discussion. If we get time, we will reach that. And if our discussion ends early, the conversation between me and you guys, if that ends early and we get to that video early on, then we will watch that discussion of Sanjeev Sanyal, and then we will watch the recent one that's gone viral between people who are bothered about Bengal and are Hindutvadis, which is Sanjeev Sanyal's recent podcast with that fat podcaster guy with glasses and braces in his teeth, where he discussed about Kolkata. That's the topic of our discussion today. Let me check some comments and then we start discussing. Morning is when sun rises. Yes. Jai Shri Ram, Jai Shri Ram. First time on your live stream, Anand Sridhar. Oh, hi. Bengali intellectuals sleeping with mustache oil in their noses. Oh, ha. क्या ट्रांसलेशन है ना के तेल दिए घुमाচ্ছে welcome boys. ED battering in West Bengal, so much liberalism. Okay, so yeah, if anyone does not know yet what happened today, ED went to the house of tried to go to the house of a famous Trinamool Congress leader called Shah Jahan Sheikh. Now I heard he has received some like Shera Bengali, the best Bengali in this particular field, awards like those from the government for doing some panchayat work. For doing panchayat work means basically giving out some freebies. And then he has received a great Bengali Shera Bengali award from some news channels and newspaper houses as well. And he basically came up as a big leader during the CPIM era. So he was entirely CPIM's muscle man basically. And then of course all of them went to Trinamool when Trinamool came to power. And pretty soon all these kinds of people, maybe not Shah Jahan Sheikh himself, they will join BJP by 2024-25, without whom BJP might not be able to come to power unless further Hindu consolidation happens, which I think is happening, increasing every day. And so many new voters are going to be voting in 2024, then so many new voters are going to be voting in 2026. So I think the path for BJP will probably be a lot easier than it was in 2021 and all the years prior. But yeah, I hope the audio is coming fine. Yes. But so today ED went to his house to do some investigations, and of course they went as a surprise. They did not let the local police authorities know. And immediately a crowd of about 2,000 people, men and women, gathered in front of his house and beat up the ED officers and beat up the 3 or 4 CRPF Jawans who were also there. And their cars were heavily damaged. They returned to Kolkata with their heavily damaged cars. And just for context, the distance between the place, the Shorberia in Sandesh Khali, the distance between that and Kolkata proper is about 75 kilometers. But the distance between that place and Bangladesh is about hardly 10 kilometers, okay? And so this incident is very, very significant because it challenges a lot of facades that the Bengali intelligentsia, Trinamool Congress, liberals, staunch anti-BJP folk, CPIM, all of them have been basically establishing among themselves. all the truisms of, okay, at least Trinamool is probably better than BJP. Okay, a lot of my communist friends do vote for Trinamool for some reason. I mean, for these reasons. So all the truisms created by these people, the staunchly anti-BJP, the non-right of Bengal, all that's going to be challenged after today. It has significant repercussions, and it's going to, I think, lead a lot of things into motion, which will tell you, which will finally show you that things are taking a drastic turn in West Bengal. First and foremost, the judge of Calcutta High Court, Justice Ganguly, who is very very harshly critical and even verbally against Trinamool Congress's actions and the government's actions in terms of all the scams that has been going on in the state. But today, in a press conference, he said that he was insanely harsh. I have never seen a judge of a judiciary person, at least in Bengal, ever speak so harshly and directly and critically of the government. Okay, these things usually happen like this. The equivalent of this would be not in terms of whether it was right or wrong. Okay, but I'm saying in terms of how direct and unpretentious it was. Okay, in that sense, this is equivalent to a Supreme Court judge saying, blaming everything on Nupur Sharma. Okay, this was that direct. There was no pretense of him having some. And you see, I'm in the judiciary. I don't comment on day-to-day things, etc. No. He was saying, no. This has gone to hell. There is no law and order machinery left in Bengal. He was challenging the judge. The journalists. Okay, Calcutta High Court judge telling the journalists that, do you think there is any law and order in Bengal? Do you still believe so? He was challenging the journalist. This is something unheard of in Bengal, and this is the most significant change that is going to happen because of this incident. Okay, and you see, I think Trinamool has screwed this up big time. This is a huge blunder, which the sooner they realize, it will be better for them. Of course, it's good if they don't do things that's better for them. But so far they are absolutely focusing all their criticisms on the judge himself. But you see, the governor saying strong things, or BJP, Shubhendu Adhikari saying strong things, those things don't matter in terms of changing the minds of the people. They know Shubhendu Adhikari was some corrupt guy from Trinamool. He is in BJP now. He is doing good things, etc. The governor has been confrontational from day one. So what he says does not matter. And this judge, it probably won't change the minds of hardcore Trinamool supporters, but all the fence sitters, all the kind of centrists, all the staunch anti-BJP people who were voting for Trinamool just to prevent Phasibad, all those people, they have a lot of respect for this judge. Okay, now they are going to be at least taking notice of things, that wow, even this judge is saying things so harshly. And a lot of people, I think even the judge himself said this indirectly, that what the people who attacked the ED, were they even from India? Were they even Indians? Okay, so the Bangladeshi Rohingya connections, all of these are being talked about openly now, which were like just a few years back, even few months back, these were strict no-go zones conversationally in Bengal. These are the huge changes that has been done today. Will happen because of the things that happened today. But now to discuss the meat of the matter, 2,000 people gathered to protect this guy. And of course, this guy probably is one of those people who we know, anyone who lives in Bengal knows that politicians give out Aadhaar cards and voter ID cards to illegal Bangladeshi immigrants, Rohingyas, for 10,000 rupees. Okay, it's handed out willy-nilly. So, and then after that, they go to settle elsewhere in the country. Now, the one thing I really liked about Sanjay Dixit's video today on this incident is that he talked about not bringing in Article 356 directly, instead bringing Article 256. Now, do you all know what Article 256 is? I did some basic reading about it. It gave me the impression that it seems to be a sort of a watered down version of the Article 356. Okay, so not President's rule directly, but let's see what it is supposed to be. Every state shall utilize its executive powers in conformity with the laws made by the Parliament and with all the pre-existing laws prevailing in the state. And it further mentions that the Union may exercise its executive power to give directions to the state, and when the government of when the government of India deems fit for any purpose. Okay, So this is Article 256, and this seems obviously a little less confrontational than President's rule, and this seems like a good idea. And I think this is heading towards that now. A lot of limits were crossed today. Okay, that is what I'm trying to explain to you with very bad articulation. And also, since the day President's rule has been called for by non-Bengalis all around the country, even some Bengali Hindutwadis inside West Bengal, a lot of people have been opposed to it, including me, because I have always been under the impression that Chandrachud is, because it will be challenged within probably 24 hours, it will go to Supreme Court in 48 hours. Chandrachud will kick out the idea, okay, that president's rule in Bengal is at all needed. He is going to laugh at it. And the very next day, on the third day, there will be a mass genocide of BJP party workers, which no one wants to see, maybe except Trinamool party workers. But now that CGI Chandrachud seems to be giving out a lot of pro-nation verdicts, and that's also, by the way, an Ankit Shah prediction that don't worry, he is after all in our side, whatever that means, so to speak. But not only 370, but even the Adani Hindenburg case, I was pretty surprised. It seems to me that if it is just objective, pure legal interpretation, then though it's fine. Then it was bound to happen anyway. But if it is not that, if it is something more, then Chandrachud might not laugh out the idea of a president's rule in Bengal. He will maybe accept 356, 256, whatever is thrown at Bengal. Of course, the long-term solution is not reached by these things, because the main thing we are talking about is investments and capitalism in Bengal, none of which can happen without a law and order without law and order being taken care of in the first place. But you see, things like 256, 356, or even AFSPA, if it comes to that, which I think might come to that even 10 years, 20 years from now, because the population is here, a lot of whom want to kill Hindus in some way or the other, and who will probably get richer because of agricultural investments. But you see, these are big blots on the state, which will further delay investments in the state. Now, of course, the counter argument would be that there won't be any state to do investments in if these things are not done. So now I'll be looking forward to your comments and your suggestions. Do you all think the state should wait out to do it in the democratic way? Let Shubhendu Adhikari pull out some shenanigans like Maharashtra and bring BJP to power, and then take care of the law and order of the state and come to power by to the end of 2024 or 2025, or even wait for maybe 2026? Or do you think 256 should be brought in right now, or do you think 356 should be brought in right now? Because there are consequences, and possible dark consequences, and there is no guarantee even of Chandrachud. He might even laugh out the 356 of West Bengal as well. What's going to happen then? Based on these premises, tell me what your suggestions are. Let me check some comments now. Anand Sridhar is saying citizenship in central government is a central government task, and they need to get more direct in controlling illegal immigration. I think giving out the citizenship part should be done better by central government. I don't think preventing people from coming to the country is not really solvable, as far as I know. Maybe defense experts can comment on this better, because all I know is it's a gigantic border, long border, and it's a porous border. So army people cannot, I don't think, can prevent each and every Bangladeshi immigrant from entering the country. And plus there is it's also kind of an open secret in Bengal that the local soldiers, BSF people, they are also pretty corrupt, and they also let a lot of people enter in exchange for bribes, etc. Or maybe they are handled by the local Trinamool people as well. I have heard these rumors. I don't know for sure, obviously, but if that is so, if that incentive goes away, okay, or if they are under much more fear to not give out, not let people enter in exchange of bribes, maybe then it can be actually prevented. I'm not too much hopeful about prevention unless you deploy basically para-SF on every treetop with snipers. Okay, I don't see how illegal immigration is going to be prevented. The best way would be to not give them citizenship by anyone in the state, and kick them out as soon as possible. I don't think prevention is really a practical idea. State reorganization possibility, Ankit Shah talked of this. Yeah, that is going to piss off so many Bengalis. Now that also is first of all, it's a band-aid. It's not a real solution to the problems, but there are other unnecessary consequences as well. That uh, the only thing you get from dividing the state would be that for now North Bengal is better off without Trinamool's rule. But yeah, for how long? Okay, North Bengal, center to North Bengal shares as much of a Bangladesh border as South Bengal, and huge population of illegal Bangladeshis in all of North Bengal, which is why they vote for BJP these days. So I don't know how much it gains. I haven't thought about it much. I don't have enough data to really analyze that or come to a significant conclusion. I think BJP has to come in power democratically, and law and order will be then taken care of, and that should happen sooner than later. What's important is whether Shubhendu can be the Yogi-like figure. I think he will be. You see, Yogi Adityanath has been doing things with a strong hand for good things, but UP, like Bengal, is run by strongmen. It's run by gundas. Okay, there is the only difference between West Bengal and UP is that our poverty did not reach UP levels because of being a historically seafaring place, fertile land, historically fertile, historically rich. All the major thrust towards poverty began after Nehru started deindustrializing the state, after CPIM did these things in the 70s. Okay, so it's not like for hundreds of years Bengal was impoverished, but UP Bihar has been impoverished. So because of Bengal not reaching the rock bottom of poverty, therefore you still see all these Nobel prizes coming out, great musicians coming out. But those things did not happen to UP, and as a result, they could not manage they could not pull off this facade of a beautiful, well-educated state with great art and culture. Okay, except Kolkata's some artists and some Nobel Prize winners, the rest of the state is nothing different from UP. Okay, or you could maybe say that there's no casteism in Bengal. That could be one argument. But other than that, so my point is that since both of these are hugely Gunda states, therefore you bet that Shubhendu Adhikari, when he comes to power, he will run things the same way Yogi Adityanath is doing it, same way Mamata Banerjee is doing it. Mamata Banerjee is basically an evil Yogi Adityanath, okay? Although she does things more illegally. And of course, there's no post-poll violence in any BJP states. So there are small nuanced differences. But if you're talking about a strong, ruthless state government, that is what Yogi Adityanath symbolizes. But that is what also Trinamool government symbolizes. I challenge you. A lot of problems of Bengal even today are secular in a way. You see, all the corruption that's happening. Hindu participation and Muslim participation is absolutely almost 50-50, okay? All these illegal mills that were being run by Anubrata Mandal, okay? All of them are run after are named after some god or goddess, okay? Bhole Baba mill, Bam Bhole mill, Shankar mill, okay? So all devout Shakta Hindus, okay? Brahmins, non-Brahmins, everyone's united in this corruption and running this Gunda state. And of course Muslims are there. And then when there is criticism of Trinamool, okay, from Hindus, they get killed. When there is criticism of Trinamool from Muslims, they get killed. Recently, so many Muslim Trinamool Congress party workers have been killed by other Muslim Trinamool party workers because of their internal conflicts. Pasmanda BJP voters have been beaten up in Bengal, in Anubrata Mandal's locality itself, by other beaten up and even killed. Muslim BJP supporters have been killed by Trinamool Muslims. And there was this young guy, Anis Khan, 23, 24 years old. He used to be in SFI, now he had joined ISF. He got killed, okay. So there's huge, beautiful secularism here. You will die equally. Everyone will die. Everyone has an equal opportunity to die in West Bengal if they are critical of Trinamool Congress. There's no way you will make it more than 2 years without if you are too harshly critical, or if you have enough social media reach, etc. You'll probably be left with like 10-20 FIRs in your name. But if you don't even have that, you will die. You will die. No one can save you if you criticize Trinamool Congress. Okay. So based on that, I think that is the same way even Shubhendu Adhikari will run the state. Spectrum of devout Hindus, Yogi. Mamta, yes. A Kali Bhakt like Mamta, once a NDA ally, becoming this type of anti-Hindu is sad to see. Yes, she doesn't think that she's anti-Hindu. Remember I told you that story about the Shakti worshipping, Shakti sadhaka, younger than me, has written books on Shaktism, is such a staunch Trinamool supporter, is in favor of LGBTQ, everything. She is not anti-Hindu. She needs to be anti-Hindu because of her electorate. Yes, among the total voter base of Trinamool, only 20% are Hindus today. Okay, so her incentives are going to be pretty affected. Yes, Anwar Shah area has, especially around Ram Mohan school. Yes, BJP will not implement it. They have overplayed the emergency card. That's why they have acquired this holier than thou attitude. How can someone be a Kali Bhakt and celebrate the Rakta Bija of Islamism? Thanks for asking this question. I have the perfect answer for you. Have you heard? Are you Bengali? Oh, you are Anand Sridhar, right? You are not Bengali, right? Oh, what surname is? From where is the surname Sridhar? Interesting surname. What a beautiful sounding surname. So anyway, there's a famous Bengali historian, pro-Hinduism kind of a historian, who doesn't say that there was no Hinduism, etc., called Nrsimha Prasad Bhaduri. Okay, he's extremely famous on YouTube. Like I tell you guys, no, that radical के बिना moderate को कोई भाव नहीं देता है. So this Nrsimha Prasad Bhaduri guy was very much basically he had a tough time in his life as a historian of Hindu mythology, etc., and all Hindu texts, etc. So when Trinamool Congress comes to power and BJP is breathing down Trinamool Congress's neck and Mamta's neck, this person, this elderly gentleman, becomes very famous on YouTube because now the devout Hindu section of Bengal, who either of some of whom are actually devout Hindus and some of whom are not actually devout Hindus, but they take a selfie on Ashtami, all these people get behind Nrsimha Prasad Bhaduri because he says some interesting things. He is of the opinion that, of course, BJP is an evil party, Hindutva is evil. The way people outside West Bengal celebrate Ram is not the way to celebrate Ram, because his interpretation of Lord Ram is that the entire Ramayana is based on Kadun. I don't know if that word is there in non-Bengali languages. Do you all know what Kadun means? Yeah, Kaduna. Let's say it's a situation where you only feel sympathy or empathy for Ram, that what a tough life he had, what a sad life he had, and even then he fought on and fought on and fought on. And so the way to worship him is also in a nice, gentle manner. So now that BJP is bringing sort of a radical Hinduism, the moderate Hindus get extra bhav. So now anyone who gets accused of not being true Hindus by Hindutvadis or by right-wingers of Bengal or India, they will say, no, I am such a big Hindu because I follow Nrsimha Prasad Bhaduri. I know everything Nrsimha Prasad Bhaduri says. I read and write. I read every book written by Nrsimha Prasad Bhaduri. Srijit Mukherjee's recent film, Dasham Avatar. Okay, it's a serial killer movie with some, I guess, some nitbits from different portions of Hindu mythology. That movie was based on even the song, the Dasham Avatar, was done with consultation from Nrsimha Prasad Bhaduri. Okay, so that big of a name he is now. Now his book on Ramayana, which is a gigantic book which I recently bought, it is an 862-page book, okay, with pages that they are so thin that you can read next 2-3 pages by reading just one page, okay. The page qualities are so bad. So if it was an actually good quality page, it would be about a 1200-page book. That book, and the book is this tall, okay, it's not even like a penguin book that is this short. That book has character analysis of each and every character of Ramayana. That book starts with a dedication to Mamta Banerjee. Okay. And he says that just like dacoits who worship Ma Kali are not the true representation of Ma Kali, okay, or the true representation of whatever Ma Kali signifies or embodies. In the same way, dacoits who are today using Jai Shri Ram are to be criticized, and because of that, I dedicate this book to Mamta Banerjee. So this is the weird condition of Hinduism in Bengal. That book is called Ramayoni. What a beautiful illustration he has. Yes, Ram was being peaceful while killing Ravana. The way Bhaduri pivots is insane. I've seen him in CU seminars many a times. Seems to be disillusioned with Didi as well though. Is he? Let's see who he votes for. He will vote for Didi only. Bhakti isn't just doing rituals. You have to imbibe the essence of your deity, no? Yes. That is the idea. Karuna Rasa. Yes. Are you talking about Acharya? Acharya Prashant. Yeah, he's like that only. Yes, it is there in Karune. Oh, in Kannada. Interesting. Does Nrsimha Prasad Bhaduri consider Mamta in high regard Zada? Yes, yes. Rama fought for dharma, not for his personal anger, if I'm not wrong. That's why he sends Angada to Ravana before the way for peace. No, again, no. Yes. Bhai, please, Raja Rammohan Roy short paper ta poro. A defense of Hindu theology, 15 to 20 minutes লাগবে and most illegal আসে বাই লিগাল ওয়ে ফর মেডিকেল ট্রিটমেন্ট তারপর যায় না না পেপারটা পড়তে না 15 ওটা তো প্রায় অনেক 30-40 পাতা ওটা পড়তে অনেকক্ষণ লেগে যাবে বাট আজকে এই টপিকটার ফোকাস রয়েছে তো বাট আই হ্যাভ ইট ইন মাইন্ড আই উইল রিড ইট সামডে সুন North has Gurugram, Delhi, West has Mumbai, Ahmedabad, South has Chennai, Bangalore. How is it that the East is so devoid of cities like that? Because it's close to Bangladesh. You see, the western states which share borders with Pakistan, they are also not developed. But the problem with Eastern Indian map is that almost the entirety of Eastern India, except Orissa, shares a border with Bangladesh. So if you share a border with a place like Bangladesh, your state will be affected. Nrsimha Prasad Bhaduri does support AIT. Yes. He supports AIT. He says that Bengalis were always hated, Bengalis were called mlechas, etc. But he is the modern day Raja Rammohan Roy. This is the best way to talk about him, okay? He will also probably write something like in defense of Hindu theology. But in terms of real day-to-day actions, none of his actions contribute to the betterment of Hindu society, okay? That is the idea. Like yesterday I was reading up on and checking out the footage of that Baba Lal Das, who was a big opponent of the Ram Mandir being created in Ayodhya, okay? So his 9-minute interview from that documentary called Ram Ke Naam, which goes viral from time to time, is made viral from time to time by these kinds of Hindus and even communists and Muslims, that his idea was that why build another temple? It's not like the temple has gone away. Wherever we are worshipping Ram, that is a temple since we are worshipping him anyway, near or around the Babri Masjid. So it's a temple theoretically. Why go through this trouble of creating, demolishing a mosque, creating a temple, etc.? You see, that is going to antagonize Muslims so much. And there are going to be so many riots here and there. Who is going to take care of it? So VHP, BJP, RSS, whatever they are doing, this is just for political gains and this should not be done. Now, in theory, it's correct and it's such a... this idea has such mass appeal that even without listening to someone saying it, commies reach this conclusion on their own because their premise, their framework of thinking is exactly the same. I have a very good sociology friend, a very well-meaning friend, who is open to hearing new ideas, new things, and actually studies a lot about Hinduism because of her sociology degree itself. But she also told me that these change of names of places, okay, what's the point of doing it? Because it's going to antagonize Muslims. Now, all said and done, this is one way of thinking it, that why antagonize them? But you see, it is also a weak way of thinking it, and also it does not have to be like the muscular masculine thing that I'm talking about. But also, the problem with thinking like that, or the problem with going on with policies like that not changing things just because we don't want to antagonize people, the problem with that is we go on living in a Sharia compliant state. That is the thing that is absolutely not acceptable. West Bengal has to be a state that is not Sharia compliant. India has to be a country that is not Sharia compliant. That is what I'm talking about. And when you follow policies like Baba Lal Das, Nrsimha Prasad Bhaduri, we keep on being in a Sharia compliant state. And in a Sharia compliant state, either Hindus' rights, safety, security goes on going down gradually, or all of a sudden at one go, huge places go to hell, okay, all of a sudden, or in 10 years entire neighborhoods go away if you go on living in a Sharia compliant state, which is why we should not antagonize them. That is not a legitimate argument at all. The temple is for civilizational restoration, not just for prayer. Yes, commies, if they were honest, would admit this. It's essentially anti-Islamic and Christian colonization, but Indian commies are dull. And yes, and the first time a non-Abrahamic faith system has regained a place captured by Abrahamic faiths. One should listen to Pankaj Saxena regarding Ram Janmabhoomi movement and how much it is important. Yes, I intend to watch that. I haven't watched it yet. Why create mosque, pray anywhere by that same logic? Yes, in this case, Baba Lal Das's argument would have been that, by the way, he was killed. He died mysteriously just 1 year later. So anyway, in this case, his argument would be that yes, in theory that is right, that even mosques need not be made because you can pray anywhere. But since the mosque is already here, and since I, as Baba Lal Das, is getting to worship Lord Ram also around it or near it or inside it anyway, why change this situation now, which might lead to riots, which it did, of course, and many people died because of it, and people even got shot because of it. Theoretically, if everyone was listening to Baba Lal Das, none of those people would at least die. Maybe they would die in other ways, in some other riots, because of some other reasons. But for specifically those reasons, in those days, they would not have died. So that is the idea that जो है वो रहने दो, status quo को मत खोने दो. Khamul, oh yeah, thank you for taking the membership. Sanjeev Sanyal's talk on riverfront was brilliant, but it will never be implemented. Yeah, why is it antagonizing the? Why is that antagonizing that premise is problematic? Yes. Why is it antagonizing? Right, they shouldn't feel antagonized when a temple is being built where a temple used to be. That is the fairer state of being. Yes. Fair का तो बात है ही नहीं. We live in a world that is. We don't live in a world that we wish it was. The reason for antagonizement is the reason why the then Imam of Jama Masjid said that wo jo yesterday, you see, all the gyan I'm giving you all is based on Swami Vijnananand's that 13-minute clip on Pratyam, okay? I got to learn so much from it, and then I googled other stuff and got to learn even more things from it. There is so much to learn from Indian history, man. Even in modern history, there's so much we have grown up not knowing. Everyone keeps talking about police firings everywhere else, except Mulayam Singh Yadav's police firing, because he killed people that liberals and commies argue or probably agree that yes, it's better off that they are dead. Do you all know that the recent NDTV clip of the then NDTV journalist asking questions to the BJP chief minister, what was his name? Kalyan Singh, I guess, right? He's saying to Kalyan Singh that why didn't you do firing on people when they were going through the process of damaging the Babri Masjid? He says there were lakhs of people. Who the fuck was I going to fire? He says, but you see, that was such an illegal thing going on. And he says, yes, but thousands would have died in my firing. How was I going to do it? And then that fucking weird, creepy journalist, I don't know who it is he even alive or not. It wasn't the mainstream Rajdeep Sardesai guys, okay? It was some other guy. He says, so in order to save those 1,000 guys, you let two communities get divided. These were the people that were so proud of their journalism in the non-BJP era. What the fuck? So, and that is why people who come from non-right-wing backgrounds and families and non-right-wing states, they have not even heard of Mulayam Singh killing 11 people, okay? I found out about it like 3 or 4 months back. So, anyway, Swami Vijnanand was saying that, I completely forgot what I was talking about. If you all remember how I started discussing Swami Vijnanand, let me know. Maybe I'll remember it once again. Gujarat is developed and share border with Pakistan. Yes, that is true. Too many differences, man, between Gujarat and Bengal. Another police firing was on Naga Sadhus in 1966 outside the parliament by Indira Gandhi. Holy shit. See, even this I didn't know. They were demanding cow slaughter ban. Oh, now look at how our present government treats protesters. Nobody talks of it. Yeah. By the way, those fears are all misplaced, even if they are made in good faith. Shoving the temple down is actually resulting in more Muslim organizations accepting the temple. Yes, that is the law of the world, guys. Everyone, regardless of what they say or what they believe or what they think they believe, at the end of the day, everyone respects people who respect themselves. Respecting yourself means staying strong. And if you are staying strong, you cannot go around saying, don't antagonize them and therefore we will not build a temple. Someone in West Bengal needs to stand and declare Kar Seva of Adinath and Zafar Khan Masjid. See, if Shubhendu Adhikari comes to power, and if he stays in stays in power for 10 to 15 years, those two places will have to be regained. Otherwise, we keep on living in a Sharia compliant state. And see, it's just because it is a Sharia compliant state, it's not like every day some Bengali Hindu is getting killed, right? Living in a Sharia compliant state means agreeing to those terms. Whereas reclaiming these places means we are not agreeing to these terms. None of which, both of which does not mean immediately some Muslims get killed or immediately some Hindus get killed. It is a narrative thing, and that narrative thing is important, and it will have to be done with these two places. Dada, why Anandamargi were burned down on Bijan Setu by CPM police? I don't know the exact timeline to further judge exactly why was it done. The best guess I can make is that CPIM was bothered about any kind of Hindu things taking too much shape in Bengal, which is why the defanged Ramakrishna Mission, they started saying secular stuff, etc. forever. But I don't see what else would be the reason to randomly burn to death 12 sannyasis. Naga Sadhu thing is false to defame Indira. I see. No, that's in a dreamland. If feelings of Muslims get hurt by changing names, it means that they are proud of invaders. Yes. On the contrary, the same leftists will say that the Muslims have nothing to do with invaders. Yes. Bro, Odisha is a coastal state and have mineral resources but still not developed as compared to Western state. Even though today Odisha is developing at decent phase. I want your views on this. See, so many things matter, no? You have to have a great geography. You have to have a group of people who believe in developing the state, who believe in market economics. And then you have to have a group of people, state where something or the other is prioritized. Okay, in some states, education is prioritized. In some states, art and culture is prioritized. In some states, Gundagardi is prioritized based on what they are. So, why didn't Odisha develop until now? That is a huge mystery, basically. I don't think they had too much reasons to not develop. Of course, their cyclones are a huge problem. Every few years, half of the state goes absolutely to hell. It absolutely gets wrecked, demolished because of cyclones. But I don't see why that's a reason for CM after CM after CM for absolutely keeping the state as a shithole. And now the GDP growth rate, the kind of development that's happening in Odisha is absolutely magical. Okay, I wish these states like Gujarat, UP, Odisha, I wish there were stock market ETFs based on the amount of economic actions that are economic exchanges that are going on in these states, man. All of us would be millionaires by just investing in the economic developments of these states. If their government did sort of an ETF where we could buy stocks of those governments themselves, and they pay us back, they give us back profits. Huge growth rates of these states. Can India Alliance boycott general election citing their old EVM bhajan? Yes, they can. That would be a great, I think, face-saving move. It would be very intelligent of them. Swami Karpatri's friend sadhus were shot around parliament for protesting about something. Swami is said to have cursed Indira's family to have violent, untimely deaths. Yeah. Welcome to Hindu society. No one tells our own children our history. Yes. Dada has done an entire Brahma Puran stream where he showed that Varna can never be birth-based according to Lord Shiva's words in Brahma Purana. Yes, word for word. Explicitly, overtly, directly, Lord Shiva is clear. Only and only your actions denote which Varna you are, or mainly he was talking about Brahmins, whether you are Brahmin or not. No question of birth. ED attacked today. Yes, ED got attacked. Socialist capitalism like China will be better off India. You can't describe China with a few words. Please read my super chat. Oh shit, did I miss it? Sorry. Let me check some comments, okay? Wait. Fan funding mein jaake. This is the first time I got 2-3 super chats, so I am not used to looking for them, okay? Oh yes. So Khamul said that. Okay, then Shruti Jain is saying, please check out possible ethical and moral issues with decoloniality on the Charvaka podcast. KM Kushal Mehra explains his problems with decoloniality. I think I have watched it. Is this from about 1 year back? Then I have possibly watched it. Maybe again someday we will look at it and critique it. I know what his arguments are. They are not very strong. I have spoken to some Marxist scholars, friends of mine as well, about decoloniality. Their arguments, their criticism of decoloniality is the same as, in fact, Kushal Mehra's problem with decoloniality. And it's kind of the Amartya Sen argument as well. When all of these people, Kushal Mehra is a staunch individualist, but Amartya Sen is also an individualist apparently, except when it comes to saying that Hindutva is a bad thing. Everyone else, he does not have a problem with too much. But I don't see how commies all of a sudden also become individualists when it comes to discussing decoloniality. But the main argument against decoloniality from all these people Amartya Sen maybe has not heard of decoloniality, but in general, the ideas that are embodied by decoloniality is that it will bring back all that was bad in the society before colonization happened. Okay, which means in Africa, everyone will black tribes will kill black tribes and sell them off as slaves, possibly, which is going on anyway. The entire continent is killing itself, killing each other. So in China, that would mean tying up the feet of women to keep them short-heighted, etc. All sorts of weird stuff. And so the best way forward is to take what we can from the benefits of colonization, all the Western Enlightenment and Renaissance teachings, and move on from it and build a new future. Forget what was there before your colonization. Now, first of all, that is not a fair argument, fair way to look at coloniality or decoloniality school in the first place. Decoloniality is about doing what your specific society was doing before it got colonized, right? So another straw man that's given by opponents of decoloniality is that just because decoloniality means this in China or Africa, therefore that means that exact same thing will happen in India as well. That is of course hilarious, but what does decoloniality mean specifically for India, and does it have to be described explicitly by Western Marxist scholars of decoloniality? No. Decoloniality for India means what was here before colonialism. What was here before colonialism? Chanakya, Arthashastra, Vijayanagar Empire, Chandragupta Maurya. That is a decolonialized India, okay, or Bharat. But also the person who made decoloniality famous in India, J. Sai Deepak, is explicitly clear on this, that what we are looking at is a hybrid future. You can't expect me to not use a mic because it was not there in pre-colonized Bharat. I will use it, but I will use it to propagate Hinduism. Okay, that is the decolonialized Bharat. Okay, RRR, Kantara, these are unknowingly, without even knowing the word decoloniality, these movies are decolonialized movies. Okay, for example, in RRR, this is a bit of a metaphorical thing, but it's not insignificant that Ramcharan takes up the grenade and shoots it with his bow and arrow. So that's sort of a hybrid fusion between the beauties of pre-colonialized Bharat and whatever knowledge, information, resources we have today, combining them both for the betterment of this society in this country, in this territory, inside the borders, and go on doing whatever good we can for the rest of the world as well. That is decoloniality. Decoloniality is not anybody's father's property. It's not even J. Sai Deepak's property. It's not any Marxist scholar's property. It does not even have to, even if you came up with the word decoloniality, even then it's not your property. You gave out a theory, now we will use it according to our own wishes. Decolonialization is also the embracing the potential of the civilization before colonization. Yes, it's the potential, not just the practices. Yes, and the most hilarious arguments come from libertarians out of all people. Their idea is that a decolonialized Bharat would mean that we forget all economic activities and we just sit at home and do puja pat. And these same libertarians are also saying that we are talking about so much past glories, our economy was so great, etc. So, first let's assume that, yes, maybe that was fake. No economic activity happened in Bharat was not an economic giant. Let's assume that bullshit premise. Okay. Even then, if today's Hindutvadi decolonializers are saying that it was great economically back then, why won't we try to do it today? Why will we stop that and just do puja pat at home? अरे भाई, उनके प्रेमिस में, आर्ग्यूमेंट में, सब कुछ में कॉन्ट्रडिक्शंस भरा है. आइडिया यही है कि पहले हमारा इकोनॉमिक प्रावस और धार्मिक प्रावस इक्वल था. और चाणक्य का, फॉर गॉड से, चाणक्य का खुद का कोट है, सुखस्य मूलम धर्म, धर्मस्य मूलम अर्थ. अर्थ के बिना ये नहीं होगा. ये सबको पता है एक्सेप्ट द कम्युनिस्ट हिंदुत्ववादीज. देयर आर कम्युनिस्ट हिंदुत्ववादीज. They are the most irritating people I've ever seen on Twitter. But if our premise is that India was a great country, it was great economically, and it was great because of its dharmic traditions, why won't we try to replicate that? So where is this idea that decolonialization will lead to an end of great economics for Bharat? अरे भाई, अरे वही दिक्कत है कुशल के साथ, ही एंड AIM थिंक कि डीकोलोनियलिटी होगा तो पता नहीं सब झोपड़ियों में रहने लगेंगे. यस यस, आई विल स्टॉप यूजिंग दिस माइक बिकॉज इट हैपेंड आफ्टर colonization happened. Decoloniality of the Indian left is different than that of the right. The Indian left, like Tharoor, uses anti-British rhetoric to pivot from historical oppression by Islamic rulers. Yes. RRR is masterpiece in many ways. It needs to be studied very deeply. Yes. For example, NTR uses charcoal and some plant medicine to treat Ram. Yes. Explaining Janjatis. Yes. Had medical knowledge and civilized. Yes. RSS is basically commie in economic mindset. Yes. But they think that is going to lead to the riches of the past of Bharat. But no one takes that seriously. No Hindutwadi today is communist. No RSS BJP supporter. Okay, the only Hindu communists today are people like that fan of Karpatri Maharaj on Twitter. He's a staunch anti-BJP, anti-RSS guy, like Puri Shankaracharya. They are possibly even economically communist. I saw a video by Sanjay Dikshit and Nityanand Mishra. They said Lalita Vistara Sutra of Mahayana Buddhism, which categorized jatis into vertical categories, while Hinduism had horizontal categories. Yeah, possible. Communist Hindutwadis, tell us more about them. I will have to take names, etc. We will have to go through their tweets. But the idea is that India has been given away to capitalists. Huge capitalism operations are going on all around us. And the reason this is being done is because, of course, Narendra Modi, who is a fake Maulana Hindu in power, and Ram Mandir se leke Diwali celebrations, all these are his ploy to fool Hindus. And the best thing would be to not give so much power to not let people like Ambani, Adani succeed. And next step, I don't know. Indian values and Western technology. We don't need Western culture much. Yes. Has our political... Okay. You know what the counter argument is? You know most of anyone else probably, more than anyone else here probably, what Kushal Mehra would say to that. That if we don't take the Western culture a little seriously, then we go back to casteism. Has our political spectrum shifted to right for the foreseeable future? Yes. That it has. But of course, whose political spectrum we are talking about, right? First we need to talk about whether you are talking about political parties में किसको वोट देंगे उसमें right shift हुआ है या in terms of actual theories as well, and whether you are talking about the general masses, the village living, mafioso living crowds of the entire country who won't vote for BJP even today unless they get Ladli Behna, or you are talking about the English speaking youth of the country. In that case though, definitely yes. The only group I can guarantee you here has definitely shifted rightwards, both in terms of voting trends and in terms of actual theoretical ideologies, is the English speaking youth of the country, who don't traditionally come from Mumbai, Kolkata, Delhi, Bangalore. उनका जो शिफ्ट हुआ है और ये लोग जब अभी भी इनके बच्चे होंगे और बाकी का पूरा देश ही और भी कनेक्टेड हो जाएगा इन सब से, then it will be en masse even more. But for now, the English speaking youth of the country who are not from cities, their minds are absolutely changed today, and mainly because Jay Sai Deepak's clips were going so viral for the last 2-3 years. Now it's gone down a bit because Jay Sai Deepak is off so many public lectures, etc., because he's probably busy writing his next book. Now Ankit Shah is the next Jay Sai Deepak in terms of algorithm boost, at least. Bengal is an absolute gem. First time hearing communist Hindutva. Communist Hindutva is not in not in Bengal, guys. So communist Hindutva, that guy is actually from either Gujarat or Delhi itself. Okay. In Bengal, communists are not Hindu. In Bengal, the anti-BJP Hindutva is all Trinamool. Communist Hindutvadis are same as Gandhiwadis, a fraud. But yeah, Puri Shankaracharya को बहुत पसंद है ये सब लोग. आई मीन इन लोगों को बहुत पसंद है पूरी शंकराचार्य जी, बिकॉज पूरी शंकराचार्य जी इज ऑल्सो वेरी मच अगेंस्ट द राम मंदिर, ऑल द हुलाबलू ओवर इट, एंड ही इज अगेंस्ट दिवाली सेलिब्रेशंस, ऑल दैट. सो एंड द अनफॉर्चुनेट साइड इफेक्ट ऑफ दीज थिंग्स विल बी दैट the post of the Shankaracharya will lose relevance, okay? And the stomach for diversity that Indians have, man, I guarantee you, I think the best, the most sure shot outcome of such comments by Puri Shankaracharya repeatedly will be that in the end, people will be equally devout BJP, RSS supporters, BJP supporters, Narendra Modi supporters, and they will be equally followers of Puri Shankaracharya as well. They will think that yeah, they disagree on this thing. Maybe yeah, उन्होंने ये सब कहा तो ठीक है, क्या है उसमें, उतना क्या हो गया, उन्होंने तो जाके रोक नहीं दिया मंदिर, तो हम जाएंगे उनके पास आशीर्वाद भी ले लेंगे. That is the fun acceptance kind of DNA we have. So it's best. But I hope this does not mean, this does not lead to a diluting away of all significant religious Hindu positions of voice. Okay, क्या English बोल रहा हूँ ये, but it's coherent. But also, because of these comments by Puri Shankaracharya, organizations like Sadgurus and BAPs, these will keep on getting more and more attention, which is why Ankit Shah is saying that UAE will be the first official Hindu country. He's not saying India will be the first official Hindu country. He's saying UAE will be the first official Hindu country. Because casteism casteism का क भी घुसने नहीं देगा ये लोग, BAPs, ISKCON, etc. I never saw a visibly Muslim or mosque since I moved to Tollygunj. Yeah, that is why they don't know what's up with the rest of the state. In Punjab, I don't believe Sikhi is gonna survive in future. Khalistanis have captured every fucking. I see. Interesting. I follow Shankaracharya ji for Vedantic discourses, but as he has good clarity, ignore his political stuff. Exactly. That is what the entire country will do. Puri Shankaracharya will lose relevance. Let's see. Other mathas will retain their place. Southern mathas are becoming more like Hindu universities. Yes. Dada slow mode. Tai Karachi, I'm not sure. Sringeri is quite progressive, yes. Must read Yug Puran, critical edition of John E. Mishiner, क्या उच्चारण है उसका? For Hindu primary historical source, more than 120 verses, I see. Dada 67 live viewers, Bodo Manu. Okay. Since the discussion about Bengal is pretty much done, now let's move on to Sanjeev Sanyal's famous discussion with Swapan Das Gupta, Rajiv Mantri and Harsh Madhusudan, who is also from Kolkata, on how Bengal was destroyed gradually. Okay, that famous quote that Sanjeev Sanyal का जो अभी viral हुआ है because of his recent podcast, that Kolkata was not killed, it was murdered. It's actually from that panel discussion from about 2-3 years back. Let me just start it here. Give me a bit of time. अरे देखो, गूगल हमारा बात सुन रहा है, ठीक है. अभी हमने ये डिस्कस किया और अभी यही आ गया. ये कितना बड़ा वीडियो है, ये लाइव स्ट्रीम है, पूरा तो नहीं देख सकते. नहीं, यही देखने में मज़ा आता है. ये 1.5 घंटे का है, ये नहीं देखेंगे अभी. चलो संजीव सन्याल का ही डिस्कशन करते हैं. संजीव सन्याल, क्या नाम है, हर्ष मधुसूदन. हाउ टू रीअवेकन बंगाल. This is from 3 years back.
Again, a very complex, very nuanced figure.
Put your volume on full, okay?
Because today's session
there were some audio
and panel, we have
and such an important event at such an important turn of event for our state's history, indeed, our nation's history. So, just very briefly about myself, I have more of a finance, economics background, although of course I've written about politics and philosophy. So given my own background, I can't help but see Bengal through that lens. And when I see Bengal, what do I see? I see, of course, by Bengal, I mean West Bengal. You know, when you have childlike curiosity in school, you always thought, why is West Bengal in the east of India? But of course, we all understand the answer of that. So without going into that as of now, what is West Bengal? It's 90,000 square kilometers, around 100 million people today. So one of the most dense parts of the world. And generally, denser the part, more prosperous the part in human history. 100 million people, 90,000 square kilometers. It has got higher than average Indian literacy. So the literacy in Bengal is higher than the Indian average, but its per capita income is lower than the Indian average. And I think that's a very telling point in terms of the potential and where we are at right now. If, in fact, even during medieval times, despite all the exploitation, etc., just Bengal or Greater Bengal, which would include Bangladesh, Bihar, parts of Odisha and Assam, were 12% of the world's economy. 12% of the world's economy. And if you just go to West Bengal of that, say 3% of the world's economy, if Today, West Bengal had 3% of the world's economy. Its economy would be the size of all of India, around 2.5 trillion. So it's very important not to have incremental goals. It's understand what are we missing here. If you just open Google Maps and try to see, go from Calcutta to Siliguri, it is around 15 hours for less than 600 kilometers. In any other part of the developed world, that would be around 6 hours. So we have under-invested in the business environment.
And interestingly, how many of you all have actually traveled by road in West Bengal? I have been to Siliguri on my bike twice. Once I went to Sandakphu and once I went to Kalimpong and Sikkim. So interestingly, first I went on bike in 2016. In 2017, my journey was actually longer. Okay, I didn't take extra rests. Every time I used to go on long rides, I used to rest after about 1 hour. Okay, but the entire Malda area, okay, which is famously now, even in 2011 it was already a Muslim majority area, shares a close border with Bangladesh. So Malda mein 2017 mein kya hua ke I saw that entire Malda city is full of totos, which it was not in 2016. So economic prosperity, development and job opportunities actually screwed up the journey even more. It led to even more traffic problems 1 year later instead of getting better. In 2016, it took me about 13 and a half hours to reach Siliguri, and in 2017, it took me about 15 hours to reach Siliguri.
Underinvested in physical infrastructure, and while we have excellent intellectual climate, unfortunately, the sons and daughters of this soil have to leave either for greener pastures in the rest of India or outside of India itself. And Bengal has always been a trading hub. I mean, if you read Sanjeev's excellent books, he's written many of them. Tamra Lipti was a massive port on the Bengal-Odisha border. It's now near a town or village called Tamlak. And from there, people went to Southeast Asia, they went to Sri Lanka, they went to the eastern coast, Andhra region.
Yeah, Bengali pride people will now get pissed off with the non-Bengali Harsh Madhusudan for pronouncing it as Tamlak and not Tomluk. But that is where I have huge viewership for some reason. And that is where Shubhendu Adhikari comes from. I wonder if he views my channel, lol. Okay, another super chat has come from Kamul. He says that why can't we leverage the fact that Bengal has both a top IIT and top IIM? I don't think any other state has this. Shouldn't that mean we have top talent studying here which we are not utilizing? No, it does not mean that. You see, and actually Sanjeev Sanyal has spoken on this extensively, that the way the IITs and IIMs were built was not the same way that institutions of higher learning were built elsewhere in the world. Okay, IITs and IIMs mean absolutely nothing for the locality around it or for the state around it. Okay, it's very interesting. These places are built like a random island. Okay, it's an abstract silo. Okay, because because people from the entire countries are going to study there. So it does not really mean that therefore Bengalis are extra great at education just because there's an IIT here. But secondly, their actions also don't contribute anything directly to the locality around it or the state around it. So it's absolutely irrelevant.
This totally spread all over. They spread Hinduism, they spread Buddhism, and the amount of gold and silver from Roman times still fairly recently, which would just deposit here, and Roman senators would complain about it.
Yeah.
We were excellent producers of cotton and cotton cloth. Bengal muslin was
for those of you who are new to my channel and don't know anything written by Sanjeev Sanyal. The story is that when the king of Greece was Emperor Vespasian, or in Rome, okay, Emperor Vespasian ke time pe, I think around 40 or 50 AD. Pliny the poet, or Pliny the elder, okay. Pliny the elder, he was complaining to Emperor Vespasian that why are we trading so much with India? Because we are having a trade deficit with them. They are not buying enough products from us, but we are buying so much for them that we are facing a trade deficit. Hamara sab Roman coin khatam ho raha hai. So let's decrease trade with them. The problems we face with China today, okay? Today everyone faces a trade deficit with China. In 60 AD, Rome was facing a trade deficit with India. So then they decrease their trade, and as a consequence of that, Indian traders start minting fake Roman coins. So when Roman coins are ever dug up in India, in different places, in Bengal, South India, etc., even fake Roman coins are found here. And this is what you can learn from Sanjeev Sanyal's book.
Required for the elite across the world. So from that to now, it is important to understand what we've lost, because otherwise we cannot picture what we can become again. And that's on the economic side. Even on the cultural, civilizational side, without what happened in 19th century Bengal, this kind of interaction of colonial Britain with the Bengali elite, we cannot imagine India and Hinduism of today, to be very honest. The way they kind of navigated the challenge of imperial Christianity while reforming Hinduism. There are many to's and fro's, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But what the modern India that we are seeing building in front of our eyes, in many ways has its genesis in Bengal. So I think I'll stop at that for the moment as far as opening remarks are concerned. Rajiv?
Rakshit, it's in both of his books, Land of Seven Rivers and Ocean of Churn.
Thank you, Harsh, for that whirlwind tour of Bengal and its history. So let me just offer one story of what Bengal was and how it was perceived about 50, 60 years ago. So Lee Kuan Yew, the founding prime minister of Singapore and the renowned statesman, he had said I think shortly after Singapore got self-government in 1959, he had said that I want Singapore to be like Calcutta. Now Lee Kuan Yew was born.
I really have some suggestions for Shubhendu Adhikari. I know he does not need it, but hopefully someone from BJP listens. Just plaster these clips, print out banners of these things said by these people. सबको पूरे वेस्ट बंगाल में दिखाओ, सबको क्या क्या किसने क्या क्या कहा है. ओके सबको सुनाओ. ये किसी को पता नहीं है बंगाल में कि ली कुआन यू ने कहा था कि इन 1961 that my dream is that one day I will make Singapore like a great city like Kolkata. Oh my God, in 1961. Okay. And everyone should know that the ally of Trinamool Congress is DMK, who is saying that Sanatan Dharma needs to be eradicated. All these things need to be playing in loop in the minds of all devout Hindu voters of Trinamool today.
In 1923, and that was his worldview. At the age of 36, he became the prime minister of a city-state, and his ambition was that I want my city-state to be like Calcutta.
Are Shaptarshi, you are Gauriya Sena. Are you are to nice. You are a frequent viewer here. Good.
Okay, so now let's fast forward about 4 decades. So as Prime Minister, Atal Bihari Vajpayee goes to Singapore. And when he's in Singapore, he exclaims, "Yahan kya ho gaya? Ye to Calcutta jaise tha." So, meaning, in 4 decades, the positions had been swapped. Singapore, which used to be a mosquito-infested, swampy place, now transformed into a global metropolis. It had become like Calcutta of the old era. And Calcutta, which used to be, that kind of a place, kind of economically backward, etc. When Atalji went to Singapore, he thought that it used to be like Calcutta, and now look at it. So to me, this story captures best what has happened in Bengal over the last 5 odd decades, 6 odd decades, from being the center of trade, commerce, culture. Today it is Calcutta.
You see, political science and philosophy people will argue that, all countries go through this churn and they reach a height, then they screw up things and fall off. But you don't have to screw up. You don't have to go on doing things that are showing you bad results for 50, 60 years. So it should not be an argument that, yes, at one point Singapore was an underdeveloped state, Kolkata was, now Kolkata has gone down, Singapore has gone up. This is the way of humanity. It does not have to be the way of humanity. Okay, Kolkata could have stayed at the top. Even today, as of now, Kolkata has not taken any step. West Bengal has not taken any step with a vision to become like Singapore, right? It does not even announce any visions of those things, of those kinds. Like when Mamata Banerjee came to power in 2011, she said that I will make Darjeeling Switzerland, I will make Kolkata London. So none of which happened remotely. Instead, London and Kolkata have actually London has become Kolkata today, hilariously. But Yogi Adityanath has laid out a plan, has a vision for making UP a $1 trillion economy. Maybe you can laugh at it if you're a staunch anti right winger of India, but at least he has a plan. At least he has a vision for it. At least he wants to do that. What's stopping Mamata Banerjee from saying that I will make a $1 trillion economy as well? She is even afraid of saying it now. Okay, she knows people will laugh at it so hard. She knows how unbelievable that sounds today. Okay, one interesting comment I want to respond to here is that what do you think of kaha gaya unka comment about Bangla Pakho? Okay, I can't find it. So yeah, someone asked me about my thoughts on Bangla Pakho. See, my stance is that Bengali language needs to be protected for the same reason that Sanskrit needs to be protected, which is language shapes your mentality, your mental constitution, your brain framework, your way of thinking. Everything is shaped by your language, the words, the sentence construction of those languages. I don't see any difference between Sanskrit and Bengali in terms of how important it is for our culture. Therefore, I don't want any Urdu additions to Hindi. I don't want any Urdu additions to Bengali. Some are already here. We can't get past it. But saving Bengali does not mean therefore saving all the Urdu that's also in there. We are saying जो उर्दू घुस गया है ठीक है, जो Arabic words घुस गया ठीक है, उसके बाद हम नहीं घुसने देंगे. So I don't see protection of Hindu rights different from the protection of Bengali Hindus. I don't see saving Bengali language different from saving Sanskrit. So I don't see any reason for Bangla Pokho to exist. I don't see reason for any regional or linguist pride movement to exist.
Bengal both are sort of seen among the lower ranks of the cities and states of India. And to me, all of this is self-inflicted. I don't think this had to be this way. In fact, with the kind of human resource, the kind of natural resource we have in the state, someone has had to work very hard to keep Bengal and Calcutta backward. And that is why, reawakening.
Yes, Shiv Sena did change their tune. Do you think Shiv Sena does the same things today, what they used to do? Do you think they did the same things even in 1990 when what they were doing in the 70s? They were a staunch anti-Bihari, anti-UP movement, basically, for most of their lives. But they joined up, they held hands with UPites and Biharis and Bengali Hindus when they were demolishing the Babri Masjid. So there are different shades to Shiv Sena. If Bangla Pokho does these things, I don't have a problem with them. At the moment, I think they are counterproductive to everything that stands for Sanskrit, Bengali, Hinduism, Hindu Bengalis, etc.
Awakening Bengal, kind of reigniting the prosperity, the progress of the state and the city, I think is important not just for the region, but for the entire country. So with that, I'll pass it on to Sanjeev. I'm sure Sanjeev will have many more historical and economic anecdotes to share with us.
Thank you very much, Rajiv. And thank you to all of you. It's indeed a pleasure to be back in the city of my birth, to speak to you about a topic which I'm very passionate about and is an important part of my very first book called The Indian Renaissance. So whether you call it reawakening or renaissance or rebirth, whatever you like to call it, this is a theme that pervades a lot of my writings. And so, and a lot of it is colored by my own personal experience. I remember when I was born in 1970, Kolkata was not merely India's largest city. It was no longer India's capital, but it was clearly the most important economic hub. It had not yet been surpassed by Mumbai. The Kolkata Stock Exchange was still a force to reckon with, which comparable to the Bombay Stock Exchange. And there was a huge industrial zone around it. And by the time I was in my teens, it first lost its economic, but very quickly the intellectual, cultural, and many of the other clusters that were here just disappeared. And my generation in particular, and then subsequent generations as well, basically left the city. So let me make it very clear.
I hope you all can hear, guys. Now, for some minutes now, the audio will be really fucked. Here to learn. I can't find your previous comments, okay, because it's gone very high. Just comment it once again, okay. And so Jersey Devil is saying, so basically the need of the hour is a Bengali Hindu nationalistic organization which controls West Bengal state politics, same with other states. Yes, and also that means that Bengali Hindu does not mean anything different from any Hindu, okay. Bengali Hindu just means that there's the one distinction that yes, we talk mainly in Bengali and we want to save Bengali as much as Sanskrit. But Bengali pride, Bengali language, nothing can come at the cost of the rest of the country or Sanskrit.
Kolkata and Bengal did not die. It was murdered.
There.
And I am a witness to that murder. The question now is, can it be brought back? Whether you reawaken it or rebirth, whatever you may call it. So I'm going to speak a little bit about the fact that since and this is the Indian way of thinking, is about that time is cyclical. But it is, so ups and downs of history happen. I mean, we go back to the Harappan civilization, the Iron Age, India and Bengal have gone through many cycles. So I'm quite sure we will go for another one. The question is, what are the preconditions that arise for allowing a rebirth? So, since I'm here as a writer and historian rather than an economist, so let me take you for a long range. If you will oblige and you will allow me. So, renaissances have happened in many places at various points in time. And one of the things that strikes you in every renaissance is the fact that it almost never happens in a silo.
Yeah.
When a renaissance happens in any society, it typically happens simultaneously in every field of human endeavor. So it will happen in the sciences, in commerce, and in arts, and in every other field of activity. You will certainly see an enormous amount of innovation, risk-taking, change happening simultaneously. It's almost a mindset at a point in time. So let me illustrate this point.
Jersey Devil, yeah, you bring out a good point, but there are many ways to look at it. See, okay, he's saying that, but other people in North India, North Indian Hindus don't think that Bengalis are in the same way. They think of Bengalis as some inferior group of people with weak mindset and all. So, firstly, see, there are obviously sections of North Indians who think that, and there are sections of North Indians who don't think that, right? There will be BJP party workers, some BJP Neta Mantri here and there who think Bengalis are done, Bengalis are gone case. And then there is Narendra Modi who has Sanjeev Sanyal as his economic advisor. He has Baby Akdeb Roy as his economic advisor. So there will be a fine balance between these things forever, right? But at the same time, Bengalis also equally hate every non-Bengali in the entire country for absolutely no fucking reason, right? I would argue Bengalis being hated outside Bengal, at least in North India or in Mumbai, etc., they are not hated for absolutely no reason. They are hated for, again, coming there, taking their jobs, etc., for those dumb socialist tendencies, thought processes. But also, the other thing is the ungratefulness of Bengalis, which is there in NRI Bengalis, which is there in Bengalis living in Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore, etc. And the hilarious part was that not only we have failed in highlighting this point that Bengalis are so ungrateful that they go to every capitalistic society and city, they go on with the socialist and communistic thinking, and then they flip the state, society and political system of that place to a communistic and socialistic direction, okay, whether it be it Nevada, California, Delhi, Bangalore, Mumbai, anything, okay. They try to influence the culture around it towards a more left, to a more leftist idea. But also, many Bengalis are hated for no reason absolutely as well. For example, in Northeast, okay, it's not like Bengalis are going for work in Northeast and therefore getting hated for it. No, Bengalis are hated in Northeast just because racism is actually sort of the first defense, okay, in terms of preventing an outside culture from taking over you. So I studied in a North Bengal hill station school. I was surrounded by Nepalis. I was bullied all my in all the 3-4 years I studied there for being a Bengali and for having dark skin. Then those same people are now my best friends because it comes from ignorance. They say no, racism comes from ignorance. It does come from ignorance. It's not just a cool slogan. But the point is, when I came back to Kolkata, I was still being bullied for the same reasons. Not exactly same reasons, but my dark skin color was a reason for fair-skinned Bengalis to bully me. Anyway, so all I'm saying is that there will be some reason or the other for someone or the other to hate someone or the other. Racism does not have to be the hill for everyone to die on. Racism is not the only problem in the world. Racism is not the biggest problem in the world, okay? Everyone will hate everyone for something or the other. But it's a false strawman premise to imagine, to pretend that only Bengalis are hated and only by North Indians and only for racial reasons. No, there are countless shades to these situations.
When we go and think about, say, the European Renaissance, the term of Renaissance has now come to basically mean the arts and culture of, say, Venice or Florence and so on. That's what when we think of Renaissance, that's what we think. But in fact, the point about Florence was not paintings and sculpture. The point of Florence was that it was a hub for banking. The point about Venice was that it was the most important port and trading and commerce hub of Europe. In fact, many things like modern double entry bookkeeping, share trading, these are the real innovations of those city-states that and the art and culture we talk about is actually a side effect.
Yeah.
And the same thing you see in Elizabethan Britain. Elizabethan England, we remember for Shakespeare, but in fact, it was a rising military power. It defeated the Armada. It had people like Drake who sailed around the world, and these were enormously risk-taking people, and they knew each other in many cases. And this is also interestingly true of the 19th century Bengal. So we tend to think of 19th century Bengal.
This is a very important point, guys. It's not an absolutely perfect point, but it is a significant point that when the economy of a place goes to hell, art and culture education of that place also seemingly goes to hell. But of course, since the economic decline is gradual, therefore the decline of those things are also so gradual that most people miss it. Only way we talk about these things so casually when it comes to Europe, etc., because all these things have happened 100, 200 years back. But we are in the middle of the decline of Bengal. We are seeing Bengal decline from the 60s, or even 61 में तो Lee Kuan Yew बोल रहा है कि हम सिंगापुर में कलकत्ता बनाएंगे. So let's say 70 onwards. So it's just 50, 60 years back. Okay. So the decline of everything else was much slower, but there has been a decline. Okay. All the best talent of Bengal that was created in the fields of arts, at least, they all had to shift to Mumbai. Okay. Now, that is a purely capitalistic proposition as well. So, what Sanjeev Sanyal here is saying is that arts just cease to happen. One might misconstrue that to think that he's saying that therefore artists are not created or people don't be good at arts because economy has gone to hell in that place. That also will happen to some extent, of course, because if everyone is so poor, who is going to sit down and teach their sons to sing or play the guitar or play the harmonium, etc.? Which is why you will see that almost no Bangladeshi refugee families have too many musicians in their family. And like Bangladeshi Hindu refugee family से जो Saha surname के लोग आए हैं, none of them have done anything significant in any mainstream popular arts fields, right? There is one great music arranger called Debarpito Shaha. He's also, I think, from Indian Bengali Shaha side. Okay, so he's probably scheduled caste. But other than that, there is only Riddhiman Shaha. He is actually from a Bangladeshi refugee family, but that is after so many years, after the reforms of 1991, after capitalism made some headway into the country, when his parents could decide that, okay, let him play cricket, let's see what happens. But now, in the late 80s and 90s, people even stopped teaching their kids music and any arts in general. Okay, so because of that, a lot of art and culture is suffering today in Bengal. But you see, art, since there is some basic learning of singing and dancing and painting, etc., in all Hindu households, therefore even then Bengal was able to make a lot of great musicians. Sholil Chaudhuri se leke, ठीक है, R.D. Burman, S.D. Burman, Pritam, all the leading composers of India for the last few years, so many of them are from Bengal. But what Sanjeev Sanyal is pointing out here, that the art is not happening in Bengal. They are having to move. Sholil Chaudhuri, a staunch communist, has to work in Mumbai. Pritam has to work in Mumbai. He's from Presidency College, has to work in Mumbai. That is also a big problem. Jesse Devil is saying, but Dada, if you go to places like Buda Bazaar, Dankoni, Park Circus, scanning, it doesn't feel like Bengal at all. Is it even possible to have such place in Maharashtra, Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka? Yes, and you see, how did Maharashtra, Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka prevent these things? Did they prevent it because of their language pride? Or did they prevent it because of their Hindu pride?
Very often, the way our textbooks are written, we tend to remember, Dwarkanath Tagore, or we'll remember Raja Ram Mohan Roy, and so on. And it is true, as Rajiv and Har just pointed out, they made extraordinary contributions. But it is also important to remember that Raja Ram Mohan Roy was actually a financier. Dwarkanath Tagore was a merchant. In fact, he was in fact a drug dealer, because he made most of his money by dealing in opium, and so on and so forth. And even later, in the end of the 19th century, into the early part of the 20th century, of course, extraordinary innovations happened in this part of the world, many of them in this building, I believe. So you had greats like Vivekanand or Netaji Subhash Bose and so on. But this was happening in a milieu where Bengalis were making contributions in other fields. You also had to go. And you had lots of business. Today people forget Bengalis through history were famous for being merchants and industrialists and so on. My own family, my mother's family, were businessmen. They were basically owned cotton mills in what is now Bangladesh. Some of you maybe even heard of them, called Mohini mills. They were one of the largest mill owners in India. Similarly, Shopunda's family were also businessmen. I think Calcutta Chemicals So, there was lots of business happening at the same time. There was all this innovation in arts happening, and all of these things were happening at the same time as political, spiritual, and religious churn was also happening, and very often done by the same people who all knew each other in many ways. Then, sadly, we developed somewhere in our head that it's a bad thing to aspire to economic prosperity, and this mindset, oddly enough, it didn't just kill off our commercial sort of energy, it also killed off everything else. We have never again produced a writer of the caliber of Tagore. Who is today's Tagore? I don't know. We have never produced anybody of the filmmaker of the caliber of Satyajit Ray, a political leader of the caliber of Netaji, a religious leader of the caliber of Vivekananda. So it all...
Yeah. See, you could argue that there are kind of equivalent or at least culturally significant people. I mean, in terms to say that, how much Rabindranath Tagore was popular. Similarly, there are some famous composers even today in Bengal, but the idea of the problem in that is that someone or the other will be famous no matter what. But all the other achievements of Rabindranath Tagore, all the other achievements of Satyajit Ray, even though I don't personally enjoy watching Satyajit Ray's movies, I used to watch them because I've heard so much great things about him. All the significant holistic achievements of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, Swami Vivekananda, where are the equivalent of all these achievements today in Bengal? And shouldn't that be asked to Bangla Pakko Pride people? Why aren't these people being created today? What caused for these people to not be born in Kolkata anymore? Or what caused them to move, even if they were born in Kolkata? What caused them to move from Bengal? Why didn't Sanjeev Sanyal live and study and become a big time anything in West Bengal? Why couldn't he? That is the question. The answer to that is economics. And economics cannot be a second or a third ranked priority. The priority cannot be therefore Bangla Pakko or Bangla language pride. You do economics, after that everything else comes. Chanakya agrees, Narendra Modi agrees.
Suddenly disappear. And I think if we want to reawaken this, we first need to get these cobwebs out of our head that commercial success, innovation is a bad thing. This has been a major cultural failure because it then ended up pervading every other field of activity that we were doing. With that, let me stop and hand it over to Solomon.
Jersey Devil, yes, very, very good question, very nuanced question. So there are two people you are talking about, okay? And the two people, there's a difference between who is hating you for what. The diagnosis has to be accordingly. Let's say someone breaks their leg in an accident. Let's say someone gets a fever. Both are diseases, but you don't give a Calpol to a guy who broke his leg, okay? Or whose leg got run over by a truck. So in the same way, you are saying that if today some Bengali faces racism in Kolkata from Urdu or Hindi speakers alike, they always resort to Bangla Pakko, which responds well to them. What do you say? First of all, Bangla Pakko thinks they are saving Bengali language, but of course they are possibly trying to save Bengali language. My problem is that Bengali language is not an abstract silo. Bengali language is a son, daughter, sister of Sanskrit, and Bengali language has also always been evolving. The Bengali language you are seeing today was not even spoken like 100 years back. So let's not call every remotely non-Bengali person an outsider just because of it. But when that situation comes that you are faced with racist comments, in that case though, if you are surrounded by a huge group of people, then run for your life, or you respond by equally disgusting words, etc. But remember that the Hindi-speaking Hindu is being racist to you for a very different reason. And a an Urdu-speaking Urdu person is hating you for a completely different thing. So the solution for both these problems cannot be just Bangla Pakko. Bangla Pakko might be a solution to save you if you are surrounded by 5 Biharis beating you up.
The tone of this discussion so far has been a study of what might loosely be called declinology. We are sort of following in decline. And that's the reality. I don't think anyone can escape from this. And at the same time,
guys, we will have to.
We talk about
fast forward Swapan Dasgupta's section. Because first of all, his voice is very screwed up because he's an old man, and also his mic is not working. It will work later on, so we will come back when his mic works. You won't be able to hear anything he says.
So that's how ridiculous we've become in our blind opposition to anything which comes from him. So Sanjeev is going to be, he was born in Calcutta. His father was an IAS officer in Calcutta. He grew up in Ironside Road. But he is now, because he went to Sri Ram College of Commerce and then went to St. John's College, Oxford, so he's a Provashi, he's no longer entitled to talk about it. So let's get over this really narrow fixation. Let us give narrow the Lakshman Rekha to such an extent that we don't have space to move any longer. Our space for maneuverability is long. I think I've taken too long and thrown up also. Made some ridiculously provocative statements, and so I'll leave it there.
Would you like to come to the point that Dada made of the inverse correlation that there exists between economic prosperity and the economics that a state produces? For nowhere where businesses have been throttled has prosperity survived for long. Nowhere in the absence of prosperity has art and culture flourished for long.
I feel no obligation to defend the economists. It is
Great discussion is coming up now. Again, Jersey Devil, great question. So nice Q&A sessions. Please make shorter videos. I don't get the time for that because basically the rest of the day I'm making music. But also the dilemma you're talking about, okay? And also shape 2021 elections, which is Bengali identity or Hindu identity. I don't see one single difference between these two sentences or phrases, okay? Bengali identity is a Bengali Hindu identity. Saving a Hindu identity means, at the moment, unfortunately, to be crass, voting for BJP first and foremost. That's the starting point. Non-negotiable. First and foremost, we have to bring BJP to power. I'm saying unfortunately, yes, because it should not come down to voting just for voting for a political party. But it has come down to that. It is down, yes. I'm saying it has come down to that. I'm not saying it's the best thing that has ever happened, that we will vote for BJP and save Bengali Hindus. But it has come down to that. So let's not beat around the bush. Bengali identity is equal to Bengali Hindu identity, and that cannot be saved unless for the first step BJP comes to power. After BJP comes to power, they bring strong law and order. After that happens, economics takes footing. Okay? After economics takes its hold, then we delve into great art and culture and saving our language.
It's indeed true that there is a strong inverse correlation between economic performance and winning Nobel Prizes. You see, in the first half of the 20th century, till about 1950, it used to be the British who used to win a lot of Nobel Prizes. And then they lost their empire. In the last 20 years, almost all the economists have been either American or based in the US. And you know what has happened. Meanwhile, have you ever heard of a Chinese Nobel Prize winning economist, or a Singaporean, or in the 70s and 80s, Japanese, or Korean, or Botswana, another, by the way, a country that's the best performing African country. So, the most important indicator of whether or not about future prosperity, in addition to all the other things I talked about in the Renaissance, is that you don't have too many economists living here. The good news is, most of those people who are giving, those Nobel laureate economists and others, including my economist half, thankfully don't live here anymore. That is perhaps a precondition. And now, thanks to COVID, they can't even come during the winters to come and tell you what to do with your lives. So, there is a high possibility that the conditions are right for the reawakening of Bengal.
They find various reasons to oppose the farm laws when they have to, support the farm laws when they have to. So as Sanjeev said, there's a clear and direct inverse correlation between academic economist success and actual economist.
If one were to look at the Bengal Renaissance, this is something which Dada touched
So you see, the pride of Bengalis on Abhijit Banerjee and Amartya Sen's Nobels. The thing is that no significant economic advisor to any government or actual economist who has led their country or state to great economic triumphs has gotten a Nobel, okay? The countries he mentioned. No economists from these countries have gotten any Nobel Prize. The Nobel Prize is for absolute random bullshit theoreticians.
The first seeds of the Renaissance were actually sold by Europeans. Would you like to comment on that, Bharat? Europeans. The first seeds of the Renaissance were actually sown by Europeans, the likes of Sir William Jones, founder of the Asiatic Society.
I think it was really the convergence of European thought. I mean, if we look at Raja Rammohn Roy,
Okay, we are going to skip over Swapan Das Gupta's part again because his mic is still screwed and so is his voice. Okay, another question. Jersey Devil is saying, but if we wait for that much time, what is the guarantee the Bengali Hindu culture of West Bengal won't become another Braj Bhasha Maithili, which is engulfed by Hindi majority culture? You see, Braj Bhasha and Maithili were fused at one point with Bengali anyway. Okay. Again, I guess you are a new viewer in my channel. I have talked about this 2-3 times, which is that I have a fun example for saying this. There was an ancient Buddhist scholar in Nalanda University. His name was Bhushuku. Okay, his real name was Shantidev. There is a Bengali poem. It's called Proto-Bengali now. A Bengali poem written by him, which if I read out to you, you will think it's a fusion between Bhojpuri or Bengali. Okay, he is writing that he feels like a Bengali now because he has recently gotten married to a Bengali girl. Okay, so the poem goes that Bajna pari paua khale niyo ghorini chondali leli Bhushuku tui aaj Bengali bhoili. Tell me what's Bengali about it. There is something remotely Bengali about it, right? Anyone who knows any Indian language probably understood what I said, but it's not really Bengali. But this is what Bengali was. So don't really jump to the conclusion that Maithili is absolutely not remotely a relative of Bengali. All these languages are not just Bengali's cousins. They are Bengali's siblings. The father is Sanskrit or the mother is Sanskrit. All of these cute little languages are all siblings of each other.
there was various people who said various things.
Now, that doesn't mean I'm saying that let Bengali go to hell and let Maithili take over West Bengal. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that let's not have that tone towards these languages. But also, that is not an urgent concern, according to me, because the population of Bengalis is still the majority. Of course, the Hindu population is a problem, but Bengali language speakers population is not a problem at the moment, right? Therefore, it's not like Maithili as a language is going to take over the state of West Bengal.
Do we realize, for example, that the word Hindutva?
Right. Jersey Devil, a great point here. That Mithila, people from Mithila today can't read Maithili anymore. So, how was that lost? Was that lost because of some outsider Biharis? Or was that lost because of so many other things, especially in terms of economics, that is screwed up? Okay. And many things have been lost. We have lost so many Hindu things. So, we are losing something or the other also. Again, let's not come to this idea that the only thing we are losing is our Bengali language. No. Because of losing Bengali language, losing Bengali language is a symptom of us losing many other things. The solution for all of which is a Hindutvadi, strong economics political party in power.
Was actually going by a Bengali, not Savarkar. But Chandranath Basu wrote an entire...
Rajput Aryanindra, your points are great, but you see, Puritanism does not work in India. Okay, even I can say that BJP is absolutely useless just because they are not following Thomas Sowell's policies. But they have to remain in power to do some things or the other. There will always be trade-offs. Okay, if instead of Sanjeev Sanyal today, Thomas Sowell is the chief economic advisor, Thomas Sowell would have quit his job 2 days later. Okay, but if Narendra Modi follows Thomas Sowell's economic policies, he will go out of power in 2 years. Which is better?
book on the history of India, which was called Hindutva. So ideas of all sorts. When we talk about the Bengal Renaissance, we have an inclination to talk about the young
Let's skip over Swapan Das Gupta's part.
That the height of modernity, which Bankim Chandra wrote about, height of modernity lay in devouring vast quantities of beef.
We have remembered, as Shravan just pointed out, only one sort of, I would call it the Brahmo response or the young Indians response. There were many responses. And in fact, the traditionalists also had amazing responses, which are quite interesting, in which, by the way, the women played a bigger role. People have very often do not include in the Bengal Renaissance characters like Rani Bhavani, Rani Rashmani, and others who were very, Dakshina temple was built by Rani, not by, Bengali intellectuals of College Street.
So they were an important part of that. And that lineage, by the way, is
Bengali intellectuals of College Street. Okay, yeah, Jersey Devil, great question again. But BJP will bring ex-Trinamool rats. You know who I'm talking about, of course. How can we believe them to walk in the path of economic Hindutva in West Bengal? At the end, they are TMC left mindset opportunities. 100%. But you see, a large chunk of West Bengal is like that. So unless you suspend democracy completely and make Sanjeev Sanyal the chief minister by force, this problem is not going to go away. So the other thing you'll have to settle for right now is that BJP comes to power with the help of these fucking assholes only, and they do just different policies, not policies of Mamata Banerjee, but they do other policies that are the vision of the central government or Modi's vision, okay? But I'm not saying that just because BJP comes to power, it will become Gujarat anytime soon. It will not happen because of these fuckers who will join BJP anyway, okay? But it will be finally the start to something good.
in some ways has had, not in our textbooks, but in real life, a bigger impact. Because Dakshineshwar, Ramakrishna to Vivekananda to all the revolutionaries that you had, that's a direct lineage of thought and ideas and action. And as Shravan also pointed out, when some of these characters stood up to speak, they would literally get tens of thousands of people coming to listen to them in many multiples of what those who we have now characterized as the Renaissance men used to do. In fact, in many ways, this issue is best exemplified by Aurobindo Ghosh. Well, Aurobindo Ghosh actually came from a Brahmo family. Now, one of the branches of the Brahmos had actually, over time, drifted off and become so Europeanized that they began to repudiate everything that was Indian or Hindu or Bengali. And one of those was Sri Aurobindo's father. So much so he sent him off to live in England at a very young age and told the caretaker that he should not be exposed in any way to anything Indian. So it was only in his late teens, when he was preparing for the civil service examinations in Cambridge, that he actually rediscovered Sanskrit, Bengali, Hinduism, and so on. And it was really his reaction. And so he's also part of the Bengal Renaissance, but you can clearly see, very clearly delineated in himself, how his response then was. When he became a revolutionary, he's the founder of the revolutionary movement, in fact, along with Savarkar. And of course, then drifted off and became a full-time spiritual thinker.
Sanjeev, you mentioned Aurobindo, who famously in the Uttar Para speech said, Sanatan Dharma, that is nationalism. This is the message that
Sanatan Dharma is our nationalism. There is no Bengali Sanatan Dharma or Bengaliness without Sanatan Dharma. Sanatan Dharma is our nationalism. It's said by a Bengali, okay? Again, some great questions from Jersey Devil. So he is saying now that, someone else said, Rakshit Yadav said that, what if rats take over BJP? Okay. And the next question also kind of is associated that Dada, today in exit polls I saw there is still a chance of BJP doing something in 2024. Do you think Bengal will get freedom? Yeah, I think it will happen by before 2026. Okay, it will happen by the end of 2024 or in 2025. Okay, BJP will be in power in Bengal, I think, in some way or the other. But the other thing that Rakshit Yadav pointed out, that what if these rats now take over West Bengal? That I tell you won't happen. Firstly, because there is a significant change in the next generation of Bengali Hindutvadi kids, the generation of 18 to 25, people who are mostly my viewers. Okay, so they know even in theory, in economic theory as well, that communism, socialism, these things are bad. Secondly, there is a huge chunk of BJP party workers, etc. Okay, who have been running BJP, RSS for decades. Their number was insignificantly small, but they are still here at least. Okay, it's not like BJP is completely a blank slate which will be now filled up with Trinamool. No, it will be done to a large extent, but it will be. But there are still people in charge. Okay, in BJP. Second of all, you see the people of Trinamool who will join BJP at the drop of a hat, those dumb fucks are not the ideologues. They are absolute dumb criminals and opportunists. They don't have an ideology. If you tell them tomorrow that capitalism is great, do you know? They will say, yes, capitalism habe. They are absolute brain dead dumb fucks. So they are not going to affect the policy of BJP all that much, okay? In the ground level, they will still create some problems with BJP's policies because their profession is tolabaji. Okay, that is the problem BJP will face. But BJP's overall overarching ideology of developing through a left of center framework, that is not going to be affected because of these dumb fucks. The real ideologues of Trinamool who don't want these policies, they will stay in Trinamool. Okay, like so many people today, even today, have not even left CPIM. CPIM does not have any MLA. Still, I personally know so many people who are still CPM party workers, still vote for CPM each and every elections. These are the ideologues. The ideologues are not joining BJP.
Any of you all like to comment on that? What is the what relevance does that hold in the context of the
saying that, I used to think that we need to worship the nation state, but actually for us, Sanatan Dharma is the real national, before we went to Pondicherry. So I think I just want to quickly come to one point which Dada very rightly mentioned and Sanjeev amplified, was that it was a very strong intellectual fermentation. It was not one way reform. So for example, when the Brahmos were proposing certain reforms, there was a very strong counter reaction by Radhakanta Dev, Dharma Sabha. And in fact, when Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar got a lot of signatures for Widow Remarriage Act in 1856, Radhakanta Dev got 4 times signatures against it. Although eventually Vidyasagar prevailed. But even again in Vidyasagar's case, he was against people of so-called lower caste to study in Sanskrit in Hindu college, to Sanskrit in Sanskrit college. Whereas Radhakanta Dev, the conservative or the traditionalist, actually was social reformist in other areas and started Hindu college. Part of it became presidency and all that. So it was they were very complex, nuanced people like Michael Madhusudan that Dada kind of referred to, who kind of left everything, became a Christian. But towards the end of the life, he had this sense of, am I missing my roots? And there is a very strong sense, again, in Aurobindo Ghosh, to answer your question directly, of are we too deracinated? Like, have we gone too far and now we need to step back?
No, in fact, he had said, as goes Sanatan Dharma, so goes Bharat. In so many words.
He said that basically Bharat is a subset of Sanatan Dharma, that if Sanatan Dharma could die, Bharat would also die. But I just want to add one point, there is a character of Germanic folk hero from 2000 years ago called Arminius. So Arminius actually fought the Roman Empire and defeated them brutally. But actually he was brought up by the Romans themselves. He was one of those kids who was captured, brought up as a Roman general. And many Bengali Renaissance revolutionaries, conservative, less conservative, there was a sense of, we have Europeanized, but we can never fully Europeanize. Our real roots are different. So it never went the Philippines way. It never fully converted. It never went the Brazilian way. So it was always, even Raja Ram Mohan Roy, a lot of people confuse him as a Christian. He was never a Christian. Protestant padres and Anglican padres hated him in Bengal. He used utilitarian's kind of very broad humanitarian framework to push what he wanted to push through. So it's very important not to miss, as Sanjeev very rightly said, it was a response to European colonialism. It wasn't a version of European colonialism as multifaceted as it was.
So we have Aurobindo on
Some great points again. Jersey Devil is saying that BJP was very new in 2021, and this is what people forget. People say that BJP lost in Bengal. Yes, theoretically yes, but just in the prior election they had 2 MLAs. A jump from 2 MLAs to 77 MLAs is, I think, is too underappreciated and underrated. How much do you think can happen in 5 years? 2 MLA से सोचा 250 MLA मिल जाएगा उसको, और कितना होगा? 77 MLA is a huge achievement, and now Shubhendu Adhikari is taking the baton forward. But of course, now Shubhendu Adhikari is also not an ideologue personally. He will just execute whatever he is asked for him, but in a way that is possible at least. Dilip Ghosh was an ideologue. He was a purist, but he was not able to. I don't know. Of course, then he also got 77 seats. But I guess his reach really is not that as high as Shubhendu Adhikari, so there is a problem with that. But as far as Rakshit saying that these criminal workers will create issues for capitalist industries, yes, it will happen. It will happen in the, let's say, in the first 3 or 4 years also, when these industries set up their factories in the first place. But of course, I think it will be taken control of, maybe later on, but it will be taken care of someday. At the moment, what we have, it's not going to be taken care of anytime soon, because Mamata Banerjee's Trinamool staying in power directly depends on these people. And also, as I keep saying, that BJP will have to, anyone who wants to rule Bengal will have to come to power with the help of these criminals, because you and I are not going to become their party cadre and run everything on the ground, right? So the ground level party cadre class is absolutely corrupt and brain dead, okay? So they will have to work. You'll have to work whatever you have. Beggars can't be choosers.
Nationalism. And then on the other hand, we also have Tagore, who's often quoted, and I dare say misquoted given the volume of his work on both sides of the debate. Would anyone from the panel like to come in and navigate the dichotomy on nationalism vis-a-vis the take of Sri Aurobindo and let's say a Tagore?
See, it's a very complicated story, Rabindranath and nationalism. You have the early Rabindranath during the Swadeshi movement, who wrote some of the most passionate songs on nationalism. And despite being a...
Yes. I'm listening to Harsh Madhusudan, but I don't have to take his conclusions all that seriously because I have read the things written by Rajaram Mohan Roy himself.
Brahmo, he even conceived of Mother India in different ways. And after that, I think to a very large extent, there was a breaking point in around 1921 when he fiercely opposed Gandhi's non-cooperation movement. I mean, very few people know this, that he had some of the harshest words to say about Gandhi's non-cooperation movement. Some of those letters and with exchanges with Rabindranath and Gandhi are very, very revealing. And Rabindranath became thoroughly unpopular in a lot of places because of this stand. And later, because of his opposition to Japanese, his slim book, Nationalism, which is often referred to, and by most people as being the absolute sort of repudiation of everything, is actually a very sharp critique of Japanese militarism. So Rabindranath and people like Niraj Chaudhuri, of course, calls it Niraj Chaudhuri never minced words, so he called it a spurious universalism of Tagore. But anyway, let's not get into that. The point is, Rabindranath Tagore had a view of nationalism which was very, very different from that of Aurobindo, which was very different from that of Subhash Bose, which was very different even from that of Gandhi. Except they had a very, like Gandhi, he had a very nostalgic and a very romantic view of what constitutes rural life and the self-sufficient. So the point is, we should understand what these various people said. They didn't necessarily say the same thing. They all had different points of view. That doesn't undermine their own greatness, and that doesn't make their message the gospel. And that's really...
The message is not gospel. I think those are words to remember. Rajiv, if you would like to...
No, I was just going to say on nationalism. Now, there are some writers these days who are trying to make a distinction between ethnic nationalism and civic nationalism. So, obviously, nationalism has a history in India of being a principally anti-colonial movement, right? So, obviously, we were fighting for independence, and that's where the nationalist movement sort of had its roots. But this attempt to sort of make a distinction between civic and ethnic nationalism is also quite spurious, because ultimately it's about defending certain values. Now, whether that value set comes under threat from an external force or even internal sort of groups, if those values have to be defended, there are certain things about which I'm sure most people would agree there cannot be any two views on it. So when it comes to defending those values, and if someone tries to label it as ethnic versus civic and so on, I don't think that really holds.
See, Tagore's criticism of nationalism was very much in a European and Japanese context. It was about the interwar. He was looking at these Westphalian states, which were very ethno-linguistically homogeneous, and he could not understand why they were killing each other. So again, if Bihar, Odisha, West Bengal were to be separate nation states in India, and they were fighting each other, somebody like Tagore would say, why are we killing each other? So you have to distinguish between that Westphalian, European, Japanese kind of nationalism versus what he was definitely a civilizationist. Some of his less well-known quotes are where he says there are two religions in the world who are out to proselytize, and they will never rest at peace until they convert everybody. This is Rabindranath Tagore's quotation. So this is the same Rabindranath Tagore that people are claiming to be some kind of left liberal hero. So again, a very complex, very nuanced figure, and nationalism was seen very much in the European and Japanese context, not in the present context of Indian nationalism.
Okay, obviously today I don't have time to respond to every comment here, but I'm reading them. So I'm picking just the most interesting ones. So first, Just Devil, the answer to your question is that whether Tapan Ghosh's Hindu Samhati, they can't bring any change, because all those manpower machinery has shifted to BJP completely today. So there's nothing can be done by those people. Even if they are staunchly anti-BJP in some way, even then they are irrelevant, but just because of sheer numbers. Okay. Vaibhav made an interesting question. Yes, this is a very important question. then what do you think would Bengal have been better off without Raja Ram Mohan Roy? Here, a very nuanced answer is required. First of all, what is the most significant contribution of Raja Ram Mohan Roy as claimed by Raja Ram Mohan Roy's own proponents? That he was a reformer who said that embrace Western education and therefore succeed in life. Okay, of course, everyone embraced Western education and succeeded in life. Now, if would you or anybody say that Hindu society would not have taken up Western education if just Raja Ram Mohan Roy did not say it? I don't think there is enough evidence to say or claim that. I think Hindu society improvises and pivots, does jugaad anyway. So there was no way that if they saw that taking up Western education is benefiting them career-wise, there's no way that Hindu society would have discarded Western education. Okay, it did not. We didn't need Raja Ram Mohan Roy for that. Okay, but the flip side of Raja Ram Mohan Roy is he said that at least in the letter, or at least from the impression I get from these quotes that are viral from time to time on Twitter, that take up that Western education at the cost of your culture. That is the problem here. So we could have done both, and especially someone in the stature and position of Raja Ram Mohan Roy, he easily could have propagated both, saying that yes, do not forget your own language, your own culture, your own traditions, your own philosophy, and he should not have strawmanned those ideas when he's talking about Sanskrit language. Okay, but also take up jobs in the British government, learn English. What's the problem? Which is what Sir Syed Ahmed did. Muslims did not listen to the half of... both of us have one problem, okay. Muslims listened to Sir Syed Ahmed Khan when he said that be as Muslim as possible, but also take up English-speaking jobs. Okay, Muslims followed just the be as Muslim as possible part, which is why Sir Syed Ahmed Khan is also called a reformer. Raja Ram Mohan Roy only said take up English education and take jobs and succeed in life. Hindus followed that. Okay, now in the same way, and of course, now in terms of morals and ethics, was Raja Ram Mohan Roy in a position to be more of a fierce Hindu? One could argue yes, because there were so many people around going around being better Hindus, or maybe he had some other constraints we don't know of. So we can't make too much of a moral judgment on a human level on Raja Ram Mohan Roy for exactly why he said those things. In the same way that even yesterday that tweet was going viral about Nehru, that if Nehru had spent 3,000 crores on a statue, we would not have a Sundar Pichai today. Now that's kind of a defense of Raja Ram Mohan Roy only. So I retweeted that, saying that if Nehru had spent all the same amount of money, let's say 3,000 crores on primary education instead of IITs, we would have a Sundar Pichai in every home. If he had Sanjeev Sanyal in his Economic Advisory Council instead of PC Mahalanobis, Sundar Pichai would be the head of a company like Google, which would be based out of India. Okay, so they were in positions of power and they actively screwed things up. And one may say that yes, things could have been much worse. Okay, we don't know. There were better people all around. Raja Ram Mohan Roy was of course a position of an intellectual, but in terms of the Prime Minister, Vallabhbhai Patel was a direct better choice in front of everyone. So it's all shady and grey.
So on nationalism,
why don't we get the audience?
Somebody could take a mic around and we could probably get some questions from the audience in as well.
My name is Devajyoti, and thanks Sanjeev, and thanks you, Mr. Dasgupta. So I'm also one of them who just fled away from Bengal just to save myself. So coming back to this question of nationalism, now we heard these called like Joy Bangla or something. Now we know what Joy Bangla is. So what is wrong with this Bengali nationalism? After all, we are all...
Yeah, Saptarshi, in that I am significantly uneducated. I don't know what he evolved into. Did he evolve into a sort of a, like, let's say, remotely like Savarkar? Or did he evolve into more British? I don't know the exact chronology of the years when he died, when he was born, and when he said which. So did he evolve? Are you claiming that? If he did evolve, then I have no problem. Like Rabindranath Tagore evolved in the opposite direction. Ambedkar evolved in the kind of a more nationalistic direction, or a less antagonistic view towards Hindus. He evolved towards that. So yes, everyone evolves.
All discussing here about reawakening Bengal, right? So it's a Bengali nationalism we are discussing. So what is wrong with Bengali nationalism? I was studying in Milan, so I was discussing with.
If you could please ask your question.
Okay, okay. So probably what is wrong with Bengali nationalism with Joy Bangla? That's Mamata Banerjee's probably.
Our answers.
See, I don't think when we talk of India as a civilization, as I mentioned, if we had a Bengali nation state and an Odia nation state, that would be Bengali and Odia nationalism. India is more analogous to the European Union, not to France or Belgium or Germany or Spain or Portugal. So you can have Spanish nationalism, quote unquote, but it is definitely today in the framework of European Union. We are even more coherent, organically united. So it's more about semantics. You can call India the civilization, the superset, and whether you want to call it Bengali or Haryanvi sub-nationalism or nationalism, it's ultimately a matter of words. So of course, we should be proud of our individual regional identities. Should we use the word nationalism for it or sub-nationalism? I think that's a matter of difference of degree.
Rajputra Narendra, yes, if you think Ambedkar was not a nationalist by that, at least in 1946, you have absolutely no reading of history. You are 100% wrong. Ambedkar was absolutely a nationalist.
Not a fundamental difference. The super framework is about a civilization. And so, for example, Rajiv and I in a book, we say that India is a civilization that is now becoming a modern nation. It was not a modern nation, of course, earlier. This is now becoming a modern nation because I can get up and go to Bangalore or Pune or Gurgaon and then come back to Calcutta and live in a very seamless manner, which was not the case for our grandparents, for example. So I think the right word is sub-nationalism, and that's a completely organic and legitimate feeling that we should encourage.
Say one thing. You know, at the beginning of this discussion, I think it was Harsh who asked the question that as a school child, he was bewildered as to why the eastern state of India is called West Bengal. And I think it's and it comes to your question, we have to ask ourselves, why is this place called West Bengal? In the context of the question, a very legitimate question which you asked, why isn't it Bengal? In 1947, 46 actually, when the whole scheme of separatism was envisaged, it was envisaged that Bengal would go and become a part of Pakistan. Instead, we had West Bengal and East Bengal. Why? Now you ask yourself that question, why? I'm not going to go into that history. Why was West Bengal created? It was created for a particular reason. Because the people of West Bengal, or let's put it more bluntly, that the Hindus of Bengal felt a greater affinity towards India than they felt towards anything else. To my mind, that is also one of the reasons why we don't want a greater Bangladesh. And I would rather think of Joy Bangla as that dreaded eye disease which infected a lot of people in the 1970s and 80s rather than a political slogan.
Hello. This little longish question, but I'll just go ahead. Would you say that?
Okay, so if he evolved the way Ambedkar did, okay, I will need confirmations after seeing direct evidence. Then fine. Okay, Gorgo is saying read what people like Shamiji, Ravi Thakur, Aurobindo said about Raja. Okay, now when did they say those good things about Raja, and what were they based on? Even Bankim praised Bengalis accepting English education. Would you blame him too? No, I'm not against people taking up English education because that is part of the hybrid decolonialized future, which is why I'm not against using a microphone. Okay, so does it have to come at the cost of losing your roots? And I don't think Bankim also recommended that. Okay, Ambedkar, he supported Bhima Koregaon, in which Mahars fought alongside British to defeat Peshwas and Marathas. So much nationalism. Which year was that? And then why did he say that Hindus ka kya hoga, Hindus ka kya hoga, Hinduo ka kya hoga, Hinduo ka kya hoga? Why did he ask for population exchange? Huh? And he also was opposed to Nehru's China love. Okay. He also said that socialism should not be added in the constitution because every generation has its own views on economics. You can't just stamp it on the constitution that it will remain socialist forever and ever. Why was he doing that? Because he was Mahar. Gandu hai kya tu?
Political reawakening is the solution for reawakening of any state or specifically for Bengal. Is there any reawakening possible without it? Also, given the limited political leadership choices we face, or would you say that it is us, the people of Bengal, as Swapanda said, who have to change with respect to rejecting hate and violence? And will change of environment automatically change the political leadership and put it in place, and they'll be forced to reawaken themselves? Thank you.
So the way I would think of it is that ultimately politics, even economics, etc., are downstream of culture and mindset. So the first thing we have to change is that whether or not we as a society, and I'm going to say Bengalis, want actually something different from what has been going on in the recent few decades. And if we don't want it, then that's the end of the conversation. So then we should just continue with what it is. Clearly, those assembled in this room, at least those, think that we should be doing something else. And that awakening itself is step number one. By the way, as I said, a lot of this is in response to every renaissance happens in response to whatever was happening is going on, or a threat or something that preceded it. So in the case of the Europeans, it was the series of religious wars that were going on in Europe. It happens in response to the Roman Catholic churches' complete control over intellectual life, over large amounts of the economy in terms of their holdings of land, and so on. And that is the context in which their Renaissance happened. It was a response to it, and by the way, it happened equally in the Protestant and in the Roman Catholic parts of Europe in different ways. The Bengal Renaissance we were discussing was first and foremost an intellectual response to colonization. We were the first part of India to be properly colonized. We faced, consequently, the worst of it in terms, for example, the 1770 famine, which was unbelievable. We also, by the way, faced the last famine in 1943, but the 1770 famine was really devastating. This was also the part of India that deindustrialized first, because Bengal was the place where textile really came from. This was a textile producing part of the world. And when the Industrial Revolution happens in Europe, this is the place that deindustrialized first. By the way, many people know that Kolkata was 3 villages, and the Job Charnock took it over, etc. Very important to remember that those who lived in those villages were, for the most part, they were weavers. The Boshaks and the Roy Chaudhurys, etc., were essentially merchants of cloth. That's why Job Charnock came in the first place. They weren't really farmers living in those villages. So these were weaver villages. And so all the point I'm making is that first and foremost, there has to be a period of intellectual churn, a acceptance by society at large, but certainly by the thinking classes to start with, that look, we need something to change. And sometimes that happens simultaneously and sometimes it precedes it. The 1991 reforms that happened in India was not preceded by intellectual change. Actually, in that case, we had an economic collapse. The Soviet Union collapsed along with it, and we were forced to do the reforms. The intellectual class in India actually did not want those reforms, and I remember very clearly.
Those who credit Manmohan Singh or P.V. Narasimha Rao saying that yes, they need to be appreciated for doing these reforms. This is the reality. They were forced to do it, and the intellectual class didn't even like it. Which is to say, Manmohan Singh even personally might not have. He might have liked it because he was an economist who probably knew these things. But at least P.V. Narasimha Rao, he personally did not like these things, possibly. But at least the academia did not like it, definitely.
Some of you may be old enough to do so as well, that the intellectual class of India actually was against the 1991 reform. It was in the 90s that a new group of people, some of them of my age group, who basically emerged out of the change that was forced upon us and then embraced the new kind of market-based open economics. But very often, the mindset change perhaps should happen first. And I think that would make it a lot easier, because then it begins to pervade through into various things. People forget the extent to which the intellectual framework that you have drives what you do, not so much the conclusions you reach or even the evidence that is placed. Once you have a certain intellectual framework and it's grown in the soil, it drives the events afterwards. In the case of economic reforms in India, the reason even today we keep debating reforms that are blatantly obviously needed is because the reforms started before the intellectual change. Otherwise, it would have been much easier. So this is it's still a struggle today to do obvious reforms in India. It's only in 2021 that we have dared to begin unapologetically to use the word privatization. Come on. But
and to be fair to Sanjeev Sanyal, we have not really, there's no we in this. He was the first in mainstream, in any remotely government position who unapologetically said that, yes, we are doing privatization. We are not de-investing or divesting, okay? We are privatizing. Suno, आँख खुल के सुनो. That there was that scene, in Gangs of Wasseypur, वो मनोज बाजपेयी उसका आँख पकड़ के बोलता है कि देख देख ना मदरचोद देख. That is what I feel about these things that सुन privatization हो रहा है सुन. And that is how I feel about Aparna Sen as well now, since that Ranveer Shori has become a right winger, that even she, देखो Aparna Sen देखो, see what his tweets say.
This is the point. So I hope that through the intellectual churn that we are hopefully going through here in Bengal, the first thing that changes is the mindset, the cultural context. Most other things will actually flow from it.
Hello. So my question is that Mr. Sanyal, you said in your opening remarks that Bengalis hate innovation. So what about incentivizing innovation? You know, like suppose the Prime Minister Garib Kalyan Yojana, subject to as and when it gets here, it can be like now it is 6,000 per quarter. It can be 5,000 per quarter and 1,000 worth of securities of some growing company which is over here right now. So that way, if some people start having a skin in the game, they'll automatically do the required effort intellectually to accept innovation. It's just my thought. I just want to know whether it's a good thought or not.
Rakshit Yadav, Aparna Sen is a legendary actress and film director. She made her debut in a Satyajit Ray film. Her daughter is Konkona Sen Sharma, okay? So she is basically the ex-mother-in-law of Ranveer Shori. And she was one of the foremost intellectual faces who supported Mamata Banerjee in her effort to kick out Tatas from Bengal. And now her ex-son-in-law is a Sanghi.
No, I think that probably gets too specific. You know, you're talking about a particular scheme or something, and ultimately, this is not about handouts. I think what Sanjeev was referring to was, again, like if you go back to the words he was using, mindset, thinking. So risk-taking is also what he used in his opening remarks. Where you have risk-taking, where you have a certain mindset to try new things, you're open to new ideas, then sort of good things happen.
Yeah, I think that's the point. I mean, I don't know about the specific scheme you're talking about, but the point I'm making is that while there may be case for government intervention in certain areas to get maybe infant industries, etc. going, as a general principle, the state should not be involved in trying to sort of do this. I would argue that would sort of get in the way of the risk-taking in itself, because that would mean that a group of bureaucrats would be deciding what it is that they should be innovating in. And I would argue that that usually does not lead to good outcomes. Now, I know somebody will say Singapore does it so well. Yeah, maybe Singapore can get away with it. But, you know, having lived in Singapore for a long time, let me say, even their approach is not as state-led as people think it is.
Yeah.
The state does have a role, but its role should be essentially in background things like infrastructure, making sure the regulations are simple, and those kinds of things. And Singapore does a fabulous, fabulous job of that first. Picking winners.
Yeah.
And occasionally the government does pick good winners, but the Singapore, Temasek, and all these other institutions also back plenty of losers. So I think their real strength is not in the picking winners part, but in providing the environment for foreign and domestic entrepreneurship to do their thing. So given that background, I would say the state can provide some of the overall infrastructure for doing the innovation. Ultimately, the innovation has to be done by society at large. The state getting out of the way is a very important part of that. And that is also true of cultural innovation. Till, I think, only 15 years ago, it was not allowed by the state to perform Rabindranath's works in any other way except for the prescribed way as given by the state, by Vishwabharati, by the state.
Yes, guys. See, a point repeatedly made by Vivek Ramaswamy is that when you don't believe in God, you believe in anything. There's a void in your hearts that is getting filled up by wokeism. And that is so true. And you see, that is the major masterstroke by UAE. They have realized that you cannot replace opium of the masses by vacuum or by a completely different thing. वो ओपियम से जो नशा हो रहा है वो नशा कोई और सिमिलर नशा से ही रिप्लेस करना पड़ेगा. So the antidote to Islamic radicalism in UAE is not atheism. This is why UAE will be a Hindu country in the future. This is why UAE is doing so many Hindu-ish and Hindu things directly and indirectly, okay? Now, what Sanjeev Sanyal is talking about here is that atheist commie Bengalis who don't believe in anything that this land has produced in terms of culture, okay? We have only produced casteism and Satyapratha. But when it came to Rabindranath Tagore is a absolutely a deity. his words are sacrosanct, even though they haven't read anything he has read, even though they haven't read anything he has written about Muslims, and they have not read what Rabindranath Tagore said about Aurangzeb's demolition of Kashi Vishwanath temple, and they have not read what Rabindranath said about Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. But anyway, whatever they have read about Rabindranath, that is sacro-fucking-sanct. And his music is sacrosanct. And the melody is sacrosanct. You are not allowed to, basically culturally, you are not allowed to move away from Rabindra Sangeet, even by a hair, okay? Even though at one point Rabindra Sangeet was basically played with just an esraj and tabla. At one point when harmonium was applied to Rabindra Sangeet, even then those purists were up in arms that no, Rabindra Sangeet is getting destroyed. Arey bhai, out of so many things to protect, at the end of the day, because you could not protect anything else, you are down to protecting music created by one man. How weird is that? That shows that every human has a general tendency to protect whatever they think is their culture at any cost, okay? But you have to admit what is really your culture. One man's composition cannot be your entire culture, okay? And see, this idea that there are tribute bands, cover bands who do covers of only one artist, that's a pretty common theme. But there are so many bands who make money by doing covers of one particular band. And then in India, for example, almost 99.99% of rock bands make money, earn their living by doing covers of Bollywood. The only artist in West Bengal who earns his living by just doing original music is Rupam Islam from the band Fossils. Everyone else does covers. But up until few years back, there was a huge industry of singers singing only and only Rabindranath Tagore's songs in the so-called perfect way. How destroyed does a society get that your sole music industry relies on singing one person's songs? That is not even the main point here. The main point is that all this puritanism about losing your culture, and Rabindranath is so great, Rabindranath's culture is getting lost, all that was different even 20 years back. 20 years back, the sole thing that we were losing was Rabindranath's melody, okay? I know of a singer, he is a great friend of mine. He once went on a morning chat show on some news channel, and he was taking requests from the live audience over phone calls, and he sang many famous Hindi songs, famous Bengali songs, classic songs. Now he had taken an acoustic guitar with him. He was wearing a sleeveless because he used to work out a lot back then, and his triceps were all bursting out of his t-shirt, and he was wearing a bandana, okay? This I'm talking about in 2010 or 11, okay? And someone in the phone asks him to sing a Rabindra Sangeet. He sings a Rabindra Sangeet in his slightly more modern way, not in the exact way, because he hasn't even learned Rabindra Sangeet in that specific way, okay? In the next 5-10 minutes, 15 people call him up and say you are the worst thing to have happened on the face of humanity, okay? Because you modified Rabindranath's songs. Not only that, you sang it wearing a sleeveless and a bandana. Holy fuck! This is the true face of Bengali pride, and this is why I can't stand it.
So, you actually had created the most absurd situation where Rabindranath Tagore, who's one of his most famous poems, says, there should be not narrow domestic walls holding back innovation. And what do you do with his works? Build narrow domestic walls. It's completely absurd. So I think that is very important, that we need to stop having this idea that the state has to mollycoddle all of this. It doesn't. Risk-taking is a way of life.
May I just say something? Maybe it's an answer to that. In the early 90s, a lot of us used to ask a basic question. Why are there so many Indians in this world who are succeeding, but not India? So let me ask this question here in this context. Why are there so many Bengalis all over the world who are making a mark, but not in Bengal? And I think you'll get the answer to that in this.
Sanjeev speaks of innovation. Rajiv, you are a venture capitalist. We speak of jobs. Do you think Bengal has the necessary ingredients to become a hub for startups and innovation?
No, see, it is actually astonishing, to Dada's point. It is actually astonishing. A state which has, I think, India's first IIM, India's first IIT, the ISI, Indian Statistical Institute, Presidency College, Jadavpur University, all these great institutions where thousands of students come every year, they come here, they get their degrees and they leave.
हाँ वो पढ़ने से इनोवेशन थोड़ी होगा. Jersey Devil, great question. What do you think of BC Roy? I actually basically don't know anything about BC Roy except that he was in Congress. And was he in Congress? There were so many parties interchanging. Yeah, I think he was in Congress. All I know is that he was the one who came up with the idea for Salt Lake. I don't know anything about him, good or bad.
In many other ecosystems, what would normally happen is that the students would build their lives where they studied. This is often what happens in other countries. If you look at the east coast of the US, if you look at the west coast, if you look at the United Kingdom, the Oxford, Cambridge and London. So people who study there build their lives over there. Why does it happen that those who come to study in Bengal at these great institutions, why don't they stay here? I think that is worth thinking about.
Very important question.
Yeah, more questions.
My question to Sanjeev sir. Sir, if I come to the point, just after independence, we have seen the economy of Calcutta getting degraded. My specific question is, was it programmed to do in that way, or did it go naturally? And the second part of that question is, what happened to the middle class? The middle class of before 1947, did they just fade out with the degrading economy, and that was that space taken by the elites who were once the sympathizers of the colonial rule?
I think they are two somewhat different questions. It is true that a significant proportion of the immediate post-independence upper middle class and elite continued to be those who had been collaborators with the British. That is actually true. But that is incidentally not just true of Bengal, which may have had a disproportionate number of them, but it is true of all of India. And so if you look at many of the, the first 4 or 5 decades after independence, many of those who were senior civil servants, thinkers, writers, etc., either were themselves or were direct descendants of those who had collaborated. That is actually a fact. And that's a different story to be told. But I think your point was, what happened after, was it inevitable that Bengal went into decline? Which is a somewhat different issue. And I would argue, no, nothing is inevitable. And by the way, I'm a chaos theory guy. So my starting premise is that there is nothing predestined about history. So since there's nothing predestined about history, India could have gone, or Bengal in particular, could have gone in multiple ways. After all, in 1950, the area around Kolkata was the most industrialized part of Asia outside of Japan. And Japan's economy had been completely devastated. So this was the biggest functioning industrial hub east of the Suez. And for a while, it actually did rather well. In the 1950s, new investments were coming in. Yeah. There were Sir Biren, who lived in this house, took the very first World Bank loan for a private enterprise, for a steel company, IISC, right? ISCO. And that company for a while in the 60s was India's largest steel producer, if I'm not mistaken. It was huge. It's a different matter that it all went belly up. And
guys,
as
among
I said,
many other reasons, one other reason for reading Sanjeev Sanyal's first book from 2008, The Indian Renaissance, would be to read specifically what went wrong with the economic history of West Bengal, India as well, but even directly West Bengal mein kya chutiapa hua. All that's documented in his first book.
Mindset had a lot to do with it, because whether the Naxalite movement and later on the actual capture of power by the communists and so on, there was clearly a direction that Bengali society decided to take at some level. One can blame the political leaders or whatever, but in the end, it's all a reflection ultimately of the mindset of that time, for whatever reason we chose in a particular direction. I don't think it was inevitable. History very often takes a sudden turn in an instant. I mean, what may have happened if the arrow did not hit Hemu's eye in the second battle of Panipat? It could have gone in a totally different direction. So I'm a firm believer that a lot of direction of history is not some Marxist inevitable train, but it is a complex, chaotic system going in various directions. Very impossible to tell where it may have gone otherwise, but it is not the case that there's anything inevitable about anything.
Yeah.
Or even about what will happen from here on.
Exactly. That is what I was saying half an hour back, that it did not have to happen that way. Okay, that just because yes, cities fall, cities rise up, it did not have to be that way. It was deliberately done. कि चलो 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 मारते गाड़ इस कल West Bengal का. So okay, I have to answer this one thing. Rajputra Aryanindra's this comment, because all his other comments were just random uneducated trolling. This one is actually an important comment that a lot of people need to keep in mind. That even Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism are Abrahamic according to him, because they have anti-Hindu hate. Okay, so the difference between Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism versus Abrahamism is that it does not matter what is in the books. It does not matter what is in your heart. It does not matter what is in your mind. It matters what you do. Your actions define you. If there are Buddhists, Jains, Sikhs, Parsis going around breaking temples, creating riot, creating genocides, then we will have the same response for them, same narrative for them. Okay, they are not doing that. So it does not even matter if you hate me personally in my heart, in your heart. If it doesn't matter if you hate Bengalis, if you show it in your action and if you say it to me personally, then we have a problem.
At the same time, while I agree with you, I think it's all the same. It's important to note one thing, that the process of steady decline of West Bengal had the intellectual sanction of all the Bengali thought leaders of that time. This is, I think, something, I mean, I would call some of them intellectual criminals.
Yes.
And that really, to my mind, it's something you have to break. So if you're talking about, I mean, it's more than a renaissance. I think you need a certain mental revolution in Bengal to actually get up and get yourself going once again.
I'll agree with that. I totally agree with you. All I'm saying is that it was not inevitable that we went down that path of intellectual stagnation. In the sense, so that's the only point I'm making. I totally agree with you. By the way, those of you who read my fiction will know that I spend a great deal of time mocking the intellectuals of College Street. There is a story called The Intellectuals. Please do read.
Yes, that's why guys, I had told you beforehand also that do read his fiction short story book, because there are so many things to read there. I mean, there are so many things he has a qualm against in the intellectual society of India, but he can't name those people, he can't write about them directly, so he has made fictional characters out of them and written those stories. Okay, but other than that, yes, BC Roy has made those things. Now I'm reminded that yes, he had done these things. BC Roy was greater than Modi. Again, this is pointless Bengali pride bullshit, to say it politely, because in terms of proportion, it's not the same case. Okay, BC Roy is not did not do the same things that Narendra Modi is doing. It's like comparing Chanakya with Machiavelli. Machiavelli was running a place that was probably as big as my field. Chanakya was the intellectual head of the Mauryan Empire, and now this guy has finally brought up a good point. Yes, so Ashoka destroyed many temples. Yes, Rajputra. And what do you think we think of Ashoka? Okay, the Hindus who actually know that, they are opposed to Ashoka. Okay, so we don't have to oppose entire Buddhism for that, because no other Buddhist is going around doing that. Ashoka did that. We are opposed to Ashoka, but most Hindus support Ashoka because they don't even know that Ashoka did these things. And who pointed these things? Okay, it was Sanjeev fucking Sanyal, just 3-4 years back.
It. It's a satirical story about them. So, I more than agree with Shopanda on this.
I'm afraid we only have time for one more question. The gentleman at the front, he's been raising his hand. If somebody could get him a mic. You can ask. Okay,
Hello.
Sure. Go on.
Hi, this is Ayush. I would like to know what are the obvious and non-obvious unique advantages that Bengal has
Good question.
over any other state, if there are. And I have one more question to add to it.
I can answer that one very quickly. I think, see, Bengal is the only densely populated state in India which has a seafront. So if you look at the Indian map, the demographics map, East UP and Bihar are the two other very densely populated regions, but they don't have a sea access right now. And historically, Ganga was the navigation for men and material. But we built more canals, irrigation, and then that area we did not build roads after independence. Railways carried on from the British time. And then even parts of Bihar and Jharkhand fell behind. There was freight nationalization, which communists talk about all the time. And that was true. So Bengal is one of the few places which is extremely dense. We need more cities in Bengal other than Calcutta. If you build a very good highway or expressway from here through Malda, through Murshidabad to Siliguri, Durgapur, that entire region, any rich state like Maharashtra, Gujarat has multiple successful cities. But we are close to the Bay of Bengal. We have Haldia, we have the port, we have the Ganga here, Hooghly here. So we have and some of the most fertile land in the world. We just need to understand that we have to industrialize, and on the white collar job, we have to bring in capital. We have to reject unionism. And right now, capital, domestic or foreign, has many other locations to go to. It has no obligation to Bengal.
Yes.
As somebody in the stock market, when I go and talk to people in Mumbai, and I say, what about this company is multiple? They say, PE multiple is price to earning multiple. They say, Bengal Kolkata ka hai to theek hai, 15 ke badle 10 de denge. Whether it is fair or not, that is the reputation right now. And when you are, what happens is reality changes first, reputation changes later.
Yes.
So even if reality changes, reputation will take some time. It might be accelerated if we have a political change, to put it very bluntly. But we need to get...
Harsh Madhusudan just said what I said a little more bluntly. He said, पॉलिटिकल चेंज पहले, उसके बगैर नहीं होगा ये, फिर कुछ साल वो काम करके दिखाएंगे, उसके बाद रेपुटेशन चेंज होगा, उसके बाद लोग 2-3 हज़ार करोड़ का इन्वेस्टमेंट करेंगे, क्योंकि एक आदमी ने 2,500 करोड़ का इन्वेस्टमेंट कर दिया और उसका भोसड़ा बना दिया ममता बनर्जी ने. ठीक है.
Reality change, reputation change is not in our hands. But the capital will come extremely fertile land, as Rajiv mentioned, both natural and human resources, as Dada mentioned, Sanjeev mentioned, great universities, great institutions. There is no reason why, if all these people are going to Bengaluru or Pune or outside of India, you just need to have a startup ecosystem here, and then everything is here in any case. So it's just about putting that spark together.
This is the last question. After that, we can continue the discussion over tea.
Thank you, everyone, for this absolutely amazing discussion that we have had so far. My question is very simple. Net, we know that the economic decline, the political decline, and at some level the social decline has happened. And given where we are, is it possible that the intellectual think tank / intellectual criminals wake up out of this slumber? Is it possible as of now? I know you do not think anything is inevitable, but is it possible? If yes, what do you think would move that forward? Thank you.
As I said, it's possible, but not inevitable. A lot of it depends on what society and its leadership, intellectual and political or commercial, gets together and does. Everything comes from hard work, directed effort. In the end, what wins is effort and will, not predestination. Because if you went by where the most fertile land was or where the density was, all these are post facto, you can see that this was why it succeeded. But there were, at every point in time, there are similar places which could have succeeded. Why is Bangladesh, for example, doing suddenly very well in the last 10 years? The land has not changed. The density of population has not changed that much.
You see, Sanjeev Sanyal is a truly libertarian, free market, free will guy as well, because he's always about intentions, will and work. Like the thing I've been saying for the last 2 live streams, that he says that Hanoi is a first world country in a country like Vietnam. Okay, so it's not about whether the country is really rich or poor. Intention and the will to work towards that end has to be there in the first place. Otherwise, even Gujarat, okay. So by land quality wise, Gujarat should not have had anything. So maybe you could argue that yes, therefore just do industry in the entire state and that will happen. But then why did not that industry happen before Modi? Okay, so intentions, will and work is everything.
Good leadership and here in some ways an elite that decides to take the country in a certain direction. By elite, I mean basically whoever are the thought leaders, commercial leaders, political leaders of that time think that yes, we need to get up and just do it. And in some ways, that is what happened repeatedly in Europe. Europe was devastated by these wars, not just the 2 world wars, the Napoleonic wars, and there were several wars year after year. And the thing that allowed these societies to end up dominating the world for several hundred years is that for a period of time, they had a intellectual and political leadership which had enormous confidence. I mean, one of the things that strikes you when you read, for example, about Victorian explorers or scientists is the enormous confidence they have in themselves. Okay, sometimes perhaps too overconfident, but it's quite extraordinary that these people were going and, deciding with atrociously poor equipment to, ski across Antarctica to be the first guy to the South Pole. Why would one want to do it? But their thinking was, we'll do it because it's there. And that mindset was...
We'll do it because it's there. It's actually a famous quote in the circles of Mount Everest climbers as well. Why climb the Everest? Okay, because it's right there. But that, chalo karte hain. होगा, क्या होगा देख लेंगे. ये बोलने का, सोचने का जो कॉन्फिडेंस है, ये कॉन्फिडेंस, कल्चरल प्राइड के अलावा नहीं आएगा. Cultural pride does not mean my nation is bad, my religion is bad, only my language is good out of the blue, okay? So holistic cultural pride is the only way to build self-confidence. Self-confidence is also the route to doing these things.
It's definitely about a risk-taking culture. And that culture, by the way, Europe and now perhaps even the US is losing. But maybe we will
no
go
wonder. They are losing it because their cultural pride is gone.
That phase where we will develop it. And by the way, when we talk about ancient Indian history and we are very proud of it, remember we also when our
Rajputra and Indra, what you just said in this last comment, if Hindutva focuses less on being Islamophobic and more on Hindu-centric socialism, it will be a better ideology and will last long. Do you see? You are more of a Narendra Modi masterstroke Vadi than all of us in the comment section. This is word for word what Narendra Modi's vision is.
During our golden age also had these kind of spirit. After all, somebody from Bengal, Odisha region sailed out all the way, colonized Sri Lanka, and then sailed eastward, went to the Mekong Delta.
Yeah.
So, this was also a sailing culture, a risk-taking culture, and risk-taking in multiple fields simultaneously. So, I think that is something that needs to be triggered. So, I think that moment may be arriving, but as I said, that nothing is predestined.
Giridharan, Indian government is renovating the Angkor Wat.
If any of our speakers have any closing remarks, I think they've said everything that they have to. In conclusion, I'd like to thank our speakers once again.
Ho gaya.
Sanjeev Sanyal, Dr. Swapan Das Gupta, Harsh and Rajiv.
Okay. What do you say? Let's check out Sanjeev Sanyal's other podcast, no? Are you guys going to stay online? 43 are still online. So let's do it. And we will keep on discussing this as well. This guy, this podcast host guy of the Neon Show is making me jealous for one particular reason. I was
no longer able to keep
as my skull grows bigger and bigger, the gap between my teeth is also increasing. So I thought why not do some braces and stuff,
so,
and I'll decrease the gap in my teeth. My smile and laughter looks so weird. That's the only thing I have some insecurity about. Then I was told that it cannot be done. It cannot be done at this age. But this guy is so old, and he's also he has also taken up braces in his teeth. Nina, great question. Yeah, I have so many great papers due. I think we will start them next week onwards, because we have many live streams to discuss. Okay, because another live stream we are going to do either tomorrow or probably Monday is a very specifically de-dollarization topic again, for absolute beginners who are curious about what's Ankit talking about. Based on we will discuss basically Peter Schiff's appearance on Tom Bilyeu and Ray Dalio, okay, who's kind of the father of this idea. Okay, there we will get an absolute basics 101 sort of a course on de-dollarization and even basic economics in general. Okay, after that we will get back to papers, because I have great papers from Hitesh Ranjan Sanyal, Dipankar Dasgupta, two very very legit famous sociologists who are saying that the caste narrative that we know of from the leftist side is not entirely correct. These are legit sociologists. We will discuss those papers. We will have to get back to texts and papers as soon as possible.
Our birth rates are actually dramatically declined. In fact, India is no longer producing enough babies to replace itself.
Okay, Here to Learn said Toligan Jeria belonged to Anwar Shah and it was given to Hindu refugees. But read somewhere that government gave land left behind by Muslims to Waqf, which is true. There are no sources to confirm these things as far as I know. So just hear the rumors. There's a rumor that the entire Kolkata land is on Waqf land only.
Want to drill it into people's heads, because there is this impression that we will be young forever. No, we have 25 years to do it. Whatever we want to do, this is it. Okay. When I joined the government in 2017, you had a banking system that was essentially bust, and the then finance minister, Arun Jaitley, called me in and said, since you are from this sector, please have a look at this. You go to top universities today and you ask kids, what do you want to do? Yeah. That has changed. When I was there, they either wanted to go abroad or they wanted to write UPSC. Yeah. Now the brightest kids want to do a start. Yeah. This government has its ears open. We see the problems arise, we fix them, then another set of problems arrive, we keep fixing them. When I was born, in the early 70s, Kolkata was the most important economic hub in India.
Yeah.
It was one of the most important industrial hubs in Asia. Right in front of my eyes, it kind of fell apart. Kolkata didn't die. It was murdered, and I'm a witness to that murder.
Hi, this is Siddharth Aluwalia. Welcome to the Neon Show. Today I have a super special guest with me. Today we are going to discuss about economics, policy making in India. I welcome Sanjeev Sanyal sir to the Neon Show. So just to give you a background about him, Sanjeev Sanyal is economic advisor to Prime Minister Modi, and he's part of the think tank that is setting up the policies for India on the economic front. Super excited to have you, sir, today.
Very pleased to be here, Siddharth.
So before we dive into the policy making, the economics part of it, would like to dive into your childhood memories, right? A couple of them that you think shaped you a later part in your career in government.
So, well, I grew up in 1980s Kolkata. And I suppose my strong distaste for socialism and communism comes partly from the experience of watching how Chief Minister Jyoti Basu and the communists basically destroyed not just the economy of Kolkata and West Bengal, but the entire intellectual, cultural sphere to a point that Kolkata has never recovered from that shock. And so when I was born in the early 70s, Kolkata was the most important economic hub in India.
Yeah.
It was one of the most important industrial hubs in Asia. And right in front of my eyes, it kind of fell apart. And I always say that, Kolkata didn't die. It was murdered, and I'm a witness to that murder. So that happened, and that had a big impact on me. And then when I was at university, of course, the Soviet Union collapsed. And our own economy collapsed, and we were forced to do the 1991 reforms. So, many of those experiences certainly had a big impact in the way I view the world.
And that's why you went to work for Deutsche Bank for a large period of your time?
Yeah. No, that had nothing to do with that. I mean,
Okay, here to learn. Yeah, great point, and that makes perfect sense. That since Anwar Shah's basically his burial is so just here only, that near the Tipu Sultan Masjid. So obviously this entire land basically belonged to him only. So after that, it was going to go to Waqf. Oh, I guess so. That's why it said that entire Kolkata belongs to Waqf. It makes sense because after independence, all the land of the Muslim kings were supposed to go to Waqf. Holy shit! Then entire Kolkata might really be under Waqf. Fuck. And yes, the Bangladeshi refugees came and just settled down. And yes, in the end they had to be given. They had to be given. Like the places around all the Bengalis who settled around the place called Rajpur, Horinabhi, Sonarpur. Okay, though most of those places belong to a person called Nibaron Bag, on whose name basically is the land called Bagetdanga. Again, his land was also forcibly taken because so many Bangladeshi Hindu refugees have come. And the South Kolkata Toliganj refugees also, yeah, so I guess, yeah, therefore all the Netaji Nagar, Ranikuti, all those were supposed to be basically Anwar Shah's land. Yeah, makes sense.
I didn't expect to be in policy making, but I went to work in financial markets. It happened to be that I ended up in Deutsche Bank after having worked in another place, but yeah.
And when government came knocking on your door to be a financial advisor, right? How was your first reaction? Because that meant a complete change in lifestyle, but additional more responsibilities.
So certainly, I mean, it's an opportunity to be a part of the India story at a major turning point in history. I personally have a huge respect for Prime Minister Modi, so it's of course a privilege to be able to work with him directly in this way. So, I was definitely happy. And yeah, sure, that you have to, there's a drop in your salary and all those kinds of things. But frankly, this, it's an opportunity to be a part of history, and that is priceless.
And
opportunity to be part of history. Okay, some interesting comments. I just have to respond. Nina is saying, "What the fuck? You have a Tipu Sultan Masjid in Kolkata? It's a huge one. It's actually pretty nice looking. And what's there opposite Tipu Sultan Masjid is the more fun and curious part. Okay, there is a small, about this small. Okay, a small this small of a Hindu temple. Okay, some Hindu gods are there. On top of it is a small mosque. Okay, small Islamic structure. Okay." And that is touted as also a great symbol of the beautiful friendship between Hindus and Muslims. So you can do 2 + 2 = 4. Who was building what on top of what? And of course, yes, this is the same Tipu Sultan. And that place is called Anwar Shah Road.
Right now, we are going to discuss a lot of technical terms like, GDP, recession. But would love to, if you could explain these terms to a 10-year-old kid, like in your own language.
Well, we can explain it along the way because if I explain, all of economics, I can't do it. But let's say the term GDP. Well, GDP is basically a measure of the value generation of an economy in a particular year. It's not a stock, it's a flow. This is important. It's like if you added up the incomes of the entire economy, whether it's from salaries or from profit or from and so on, it should add up to GDP. So it's the value generation of the economy as a whole. So not of any, and then of course you can take it from any specific sector, the generation of power. So when you're saying GDP grew by this much, that means the full national income grew by so much. That's basically what GDP means.
And what do you mean by liberalization? Right? That's a very important term.
So of course, it's a general term. It's an English word, but specifically in the Indian context, we tend to talk about liberalization as the process of reform that started in 1991. In order to understand what that meant, it meant that you have to understand what happened before that. So basically, between the early 50s, when they just gained independence, till 1991, India was a socialist economy, which basically meant that the government decided how much everybody earned, how much they, who produced what, how much, and that there was a huge dominance of the state in all economic, but also non-economic activities as well, because it's a package. And so you had at one point in time in the 70s, income tax was as high as 98% at the
and you were a
kid
back then.
And I was a kid at that time. But it's also about the commanding heights of the economy are supposed to be the public sector. The bureaucrats had enormous powers. They're still very powerful, but basically they ran everything. And wise men, and of course in those days there were only men, sitting in the planning commission told everybody what to do.
Yeah.
Now, it turned out to be a disaster because our economy just couldn't grow. It perpetuated poverty. It led to a huge amount of corruption. I mean, it's not like all corruption was gone today. There may be all kinds of problems, but people should go and read about the power of characters, smugglers like Haji Mastan. These were the real powerful people of the 1980s in Mumbai, a financial capital. So this was kind of the world that existed till 1991. Now, our own economy collapsed. And then somewhat reluctantly, we began to liberalize it.
So, just want to pause here, right? Yeah. When you say economic collapse, what does it mean?
So basically what happened is that our exchange rate began to fall apart. There was a spike in inflation. We had a huge recession. We were no longer able to keep our economic system going. And so we were forced to reform it. And one of the first things that happened at that time, the Prime Minister Narasimha Rao and the then Finance Minister Manmohan Singh, then carried out a huge bunch of reforms. The sort of central part of it was getting rid of what is called the license permit system, by which basically the government, civil servants, and of course by extension the political class, would give out licenses and permits. So if you wanted to manufacture something or set up some sort of a company or something, you had to go to some government department, and they would then look at it, put a stamp, and then at every step, it's not just at the beginning, at every step you would have to go back. So if you were a car manufacturer, you would have to go to some department, and they would tell you what technology you use, how much steel you are allowed to have, how many tires you are supposed to have, and for every tiny thing you would have to go back to this department. And you can imagine this led to obvious rent seeking.
Yeah, and the communist Hindutva wing, it's hard to call them Hindutva, basically the communist devout Hindu wing wants to bring this back.
Also made us extremely inefficient. So, if you've had the misfortune of driving around in an ambassador car, you know what it felt like.
And then the liberalizations mean, we allowed foreign investors to invest in India?
Well, not just foreign investors, but even domestic investors were allowed to do what they wished. So you suddenly began to have a new class of entrepreneurs coming in. There was the boom in the IT sector, which wasn't there, but new entrepreneurs as well. So to understand what this license permit Raj does, it basically also froze our entrepreneurial class. So you go and look at the big industrial houses of India in 1947 when we became independent, and with the one exception of the Ambanis, it was the same people in the early 90s. Because effectively, once you had become big...
Yes, you see, when you bring this so-called equality, everyone will be equally rich, everyone will drive a Tesla, samaj mein ooch neech nahi hogi. Okay, when that happens, there is a small, minuscule minority of people who still are at the top, who are the politicians, who remain rich as fuck, and they choose one or two few businessmen to allow them to be rich along with them, so that they can take money from them whenever they want. Sudan has great equality, everyone is equally poor. Bangladesh, such a destroyed country for all these years. All of their biggest mafia dons, etc., all of their kids have always studied in foreign colleges and universities. Australia is filled with such Bangladeshis, okay, and most of them have returned to Bangladesh for some reason. And the weird fucking Bengali they speak, like the Bangladeshi YouTubers, they have such a Western accent in their Bengali language today among Bengali speakers of Bangladesh who have not even left Bangladesh ever. That is so weird, but that shows that so many foreigner Bangladeshis are so common in Bangladesh. Okay, that is how they have their pronunciation has changed all of a sudden. Okay, they speak Bengali like they just came from USA. Okay. Namaskar bonjura, apni ki koichen ajke. This is how they speak Bengali. You'll never hear a Bengali of India speaking Bengali like that. But all of their Bengali is so weird, fucking like Joy Hassan, a famous Bengali actress. Her Bengali is still getting modified every day because now she is working in every other Bengali movie. But her Bengali is so weird.
and you had the wherewithal of getting those licenses, no new entrepreneur could come. And there was certainly no concept of startups and all of this that we are not talking. This simply didn't exist. If you were a young person, your mission in life could be one of two things. One is to leave the country. The other is to sit for the UPSC and become a bureaucrat so that now you could give out the licenses. That was basically it. There was no question of having becoming a sportsman, writer, any other kind of profession basically meant that you had to be somehow beholden to that Sarkari system.
Yeah.
And it's strange that, right? I think the privatization of banks started in 1991 at that point in time. Right?
Well, they allowed new private banks to come in, but there were already existing banks, but at the very least, we stopped nationalizing them. So new banks came, not new banks, everything, airlines. I mean, of course, many of those airlines went bust, but it's okay. But there was Jet Airways, Mudi Luft, Sahara, all kinds of new entrepreneurship happened. Some companies succeeded, some failed. That's all right. That's part of the creative destruction of a market-based system. But what stopped happening is this whole mindset that, there'll be a small group of people who will control the whole system, and they will tell you what to do in exchange, obviously, for economic and political, power.
And 34 years later, right? Or 35
Remember, guys, this is a very
later,
important point. He makes this point from his 2008 book, which is why I know this, that no big business or business giant or entrepreneur came up from the time of independence up until 1991, except, I guess, Narayan Murthy and then Ambani. It was all Bajaj and Tata who were there anyway from before independence.
Became part of that team that was reforming the banking system again. Tell us about it.
Well, I mean...
what happened and why was it required?
Okay, so to understand this, you have to understand the sequence of all the entire liberalization process. So first of all, what happened is that you had this burst of reform in 1991 to 93. But once those initial reforms happened and the benefits of that began to accrue and the economy stabilized, then after that, they stopped doing reforms. The reason for that was very simple. We hadn't actually embraced reforms. We had done reforms because we had been forced to do it. And even though it was obvious, even at that time, that we were benefiting from these reforms, the intellectual class, the so-called economics gyanis of that time, weren't sold on it. So what happened is that once we did the reform, bare minimum reforms needed to be done, and we stopped doing reforms. So now, other than one or two things we did along the way, basically we didn't do reforms. So what happens is the momentum got lost. And then, of course, the Asian crisis also happened in 97, 98. So although we weren't part of the Asian crisis, our economy also began to slow down and the momentum was lost. And generally, okay, fine, we had a good time, but that was it. Luckily, we got a new Prime Minister Vajpayee. And he also then did a bunch.
No, but this thing really is very interesting that during the Asian crisis or the stock market crash of the dot-com bubble crash, that did not affect India because India was not very connected with the rest of the world economically. But even the 2008 crash did not matter much for Indians. So you see, even in 2008, how disconnected India was from the rest of the world, because everyone else's GDP also crashed gigantically and did not recover for any time soon. But if you see our GDP growth rate, you won't see too much of a drop in the markets in 2008 or 2009.
Bunch of reforms around about 2000, 2001, 2, 3. And that was the first time we began to create new infrastructure and all, seriously think about global infrastructure. You talked about a global quadrilateral, etc. So then you got some momentum of growth generated out of that as well. Ironically, the Prime Minister who then came to power was Manmohan Singh, the guy who had actually done the original set of reforms. But in his tenure, he didn't do very much. And so what happened, you got the momentum from the Vajpayee reforms. You got some years of very high growth. And it also happened to be a particularly good time for the world economy. You had the Goldilocks year. So the combination of the two meant that there was a period in the last Vajpayee years and into the next few years, over 4 or 5 years of very solid growth. But even that, by 2006, was beginning to lose momentum. And then in 2007,
right, because by 2006 it was losing momentum. Nina, very interesting point. But the reason China was growing was for a completely different reason, which is they had their deals in place with Congress Party and US in general that basically all our manufacturing is going to China.
Global financial crisis and that. The problem was that our response to that was not to do more reforms, but instead to keep this momentum going by somehow pumping up the banks. So there was a period from 2006 up to about 12, so 5-6 years, when in response to a slowing growth, the authorities of that time basically opened up the banks and basically said, you go and blindly lend everywhere. And so some part of that capacity creation, investing, etc. was good. Yeah. But then after a while, because you had no restraint on the system, there was a huge amount of misallocation. So even though that process began to be somewhat tightened from 2013 or thereabouts, enough damage had been done that by 2013, 14, 15, you could clearly see that there was huge amount of NPAs building up in the banking system. And certainly by the time I joined the government in 2017, this was one of the big issues in the government. So of course, this is where I can save it a little more personal because I was a part of the story at that point. So when I joined the government in 2017, you had a banking system that was essentially bust, and the then finance minister Arun Jaitley ji, so he called me in and said, since you are from this sector, please have a look at this. So I looked at it, and then there was a huge pile of NPAs, as you all know.
Okay, so since we are filled with true Hindus who think everyone else is a fake Hindu, remember even Sanjeev Sanyal was called a fake Hindu, but he was hired by Arun Jaitley to fix the banking system of the country because his specific domain expertise is financial markets. He was a financial markets economist, global strategist for Deutsche Bank, for God's sake. He was in the urban planning department of the Singapore government. Okay, such a guy was spotted by Narendra Modi and Arun Jaitley and given the job to do this. Instead, if we had given that job to an academic, अच्छा होता, मजा आता.
Tens of thousands of crores.
For our listeners who are basic, right? NPS is
what is an NPA? NPA is a non-performing asset. This is an asset. This is a debtor who has taken loan and is no longer able to repay it. So he's gone bad. It's a bad loan at this juncture. And there's so much of it that's now threatening the stability of the banking system. And not just the banking, even the non-banks had lots of this. So now what do you do with this? So there were many ideas. So one of the ideas that was floating around then, which was popular with, I think if I'm not mistaken, the then chief economic advisor was also very keen on it, but others were as well, to create a bad bank. What is a bad bank? You take all these bad loans, you stick them in there so that they don't infect the rest of and the rest of the banking system is then recapitalized and you get it going. I personally thought that it was a bad idea. The reason for that was that all you would do is, first of all, there would be no ownership of all the bad behavior by the bankers before, because now you can just wash off your hands. Secondly, we actually have a history of creating bad banks. We used to have an institution called BIFR. Okay, and BIFR was like a warehouse. You sent all your bad loans there, and then they would live there. They would be festering there. Also, there would be a factory that went bank or whatever. All these assets would be put there, and they would fester there forever and ever. And government would keep putting money in there to keep them half alive. And this was, a bad idea. And now we would be doing it in a totally different scale. So just imagine, this is BIFR Pro Max. So I thought this was a bad idea. So I did a little bit of research, and I found something quite interesting, which was, although there were a large number of bad loans, something like 2/3 of it, even more, almost 70% of it was due to only 50 cases.
Okay.
In fact, 25 to 30% was only due to 12 cases, which I named, in fact, the dirty dozen. Those of you remember it. So I went back to Jaitley and said, look, why don't we take them through the insolvency and bankruptcy process? Now, the argument against this was that the insolvency bankruptcy process had just been created. So the sensible thing to do was to test it out with some small cases and do it. But I argued, and I have to say at that time, there was a banking secretary, Mrs. Anjali Duggal. She really supported me on this, and I want to mention her specifically because she was a key part of the story. And so was a deputy governor in the RBI, Viral Acharya. He and I disagreed on monetary policy bitterly, but on cleaning of the banks, we worked very closely. So I want to mention them because they are also a part of the story. So the idea was that, look, the complicatedness of a case is uncorrelated to the size of the case. So if you want to test the system, why not test them with these 12 big cases, the dirty dozen? And they were not very complicated cases as it happened to be. So, if you want to test the system, test it with the big guys. Why with the small guys? And so the insolvency and bankruptcy process, the first lot of cases they got were huge cases. And they took them on, and it turned out to be very successful because the IBC process, NCLT crunched out these things. These very large companies got sold off. They had two benefits. One is that the banks got some of their money back, not all of it, but quite a lot. But more importantly, these assets which were going to fester in BIFR or bad bank or something ended up actually becoming productive assets. And then eventually, obviously, they're also generating value and GDP and taxes and other things. So what would have been a drain on the system became an asset to the system. Two, the banks got some of their money back. And very importantly, the second order effect of that, because suddenly creditor rights came back. So there was an attitude before, generally in India, once you got a loan, it's the bank's problem. I may or may not repay it, that's my problem. That whole attitude changed. And so as a result of this, the insolvency and bankruptcy process is now very important. Now, I'm not saying it's a perfect system. There are lots of problems, NCLAT, delays, all kinds of things. I'm not making excuses for it. But it did change the mood. It definitely dramatically changed the systems that were there. And of course, the whole attitude towards loan giving, credit rights, etc. changed. So that led to a cleaning up of banks, which through 18 and 19 had changed our banking system enough that despite the shock of COVID in 2020 and 2021, our banking system has continued to improve. And today is in rude health. The NPAs are down, the liquidity is up, they're well capitalized, and they're all rudely profitable. Even the public sector banks, very often people criticize them, but they've actually done a rather good job of bringing themselves back.
I think this happened all in the last 5-7 years when there were a lot of
Adarsh Rajput, कौन सा question भाई? One question, how economy will be? De-dollarization के बाद economy कैसे calculate होगा? X number one, for example, number one economy, number two, So see, the terminologies are probably not going away anytime soon, but they will come up with parallel terminologies, to be fair. But just because of de-dollarization, we are still going to do business with currencies. Instead of dollar, we will use BRICS currency. Okay. And how much importance we give to GDP, those things will flip a bit. But even in terms of GDP also, India is going to be targeting the so-called the second spot, third spot, etc. It's not going to be a complete drastic change that we forget what GDP per capita, etc. means. Maybe we will focus more on GDP per capita, or maybe we will think more about purchasing power, etc. Purchasing power per capita, in terms of which we are already the third biggest in the world. But trade is still going to go on. Trade is still going to be based on real currencies only. It's just going to be a different currency. That's all.
Of bad cases like Kingfisher was, Nirav Modi was one, then PNB, Yes Bank, right?
So there are many cases here. Some of them I want to distinguish here because many people confuse this. See, just because something is a bad bank doesn't mean there's just been a scam. Perfectly good business decisions may lead to some situation where somebody may go bankrupt or insolvent. So I want to distinguish between business failure and scam. Unfortunately, in India, we still have this overhang, and this comes from probably the socialist period, that business failure, some sort of scam. It's not. The bulk of the cases that went wrong were just business failures. And do not confuse them. If those entrepreneurs, after having gone through the NCLT process, come back and take new risks, the banks should lend to them. Investors should back them. Because it's only a society that takes risks repeatedly. That is not to be confused by people who actually did scams. That's a different thing altogether. And they should be treated in a criminal way, and that's a different issue.
And when these assets got sold off, right, I assume they generated a lot of surplus cash for the government? Or
Not for the government, for the banks. Yes. Not surplus. They had written those off. And now they're, so they got some of that money back. So, since they had provision for them already, so that meant that, they had written them down. So now they're getting some money comes back. So instead of losing 100 rupees, they're losing 80 rupees, which is good. Now they can get on with it.
I think, and that improved the banking system by the example you mentioned when this year, right, US Silicon.
Adarsh Rajput, great question here. I think this is where the multipolar world order trends come into play, which is that Indians in India will say that we are the biggest or second biggest, third biggest economy because this is the size of our GDP in rupees, whereas USA and China's GDP is this much bigger than us, but in rupees. Okay. हर देश का आदमी अपने देश के लोगों को अपने देश के करेंसी में बताएगा कि हम इस रैंक पे हैं.
Mali bank collapsed, few other banks collapsed. India was untouched.
Absolutely. So this shows the strength of our system. Like every country in the world, after the COVID crisis was over, we then began to increase interest rates back to more normal levels. And in Europe, in North America, when this increasing of interest rates happened, as you yourself just mentioned, this dramatically stressed out their banking systems, and many banks went bust and still going bust. In our case, that has not happened.
Yes, Neener, and another thing, that is of course true. Basket of currencies will be used to create an index itself, and also one of those indexes will be based in Gift City only. Gift City will have its own stock exchange.
Our banks are in rude health. They're, and that is even true of the the non-banking system. Now, this is not to suggest that in future date something may not.
Yes, our GDP per capita is like Somalia. That is what your socialism does.
Happen. But this is, an episode which showed that we were capable of cleaning it. The Reserve Bank has continued to, under Governor Shaktikant Das, has continued to do a very good job of keeping track. And we are macroeconomic conservatives. So as we expand this lending out, we keep track of, very, very conservatively. So in fact, you may have seen Governor Das making a comment recently about, excessive exuberance in the non-banks. That's because, we don't want to go through this cleaning up experience ever again. It's like extracting teeth. It's not fun for the person whose tooth is being extracted, but it's no fun for the dentist either.
It's a painful process for everybody involved.
Absolutely.
And tell us about the 5 most impactful economic reforms that you have been part of, you have seen closely since you came in government.
So I came into government in early 2017. I mentioned, of course, the bank cleanup, which was a very major episode. But a few months into my being in government, in July, GST was introduced. I didn't have very much to do with actual introduction because I was very new in government, so the credit goes to everybody else. But I did witness the introduction of that, and then I was, part of some of the iterations that were done to get it going. Then we were, there was a whole bunch of other reforms that happened during that period, which I think are smaller reforms, but they are very critical because I'm a big believer in something called process reforms, which is small nuts and bolts reforms, which may influence some small segment, and may not make it to the front pages, but these add up. So and I can say that I was part of many of these reforms. So for example, we liberalized the drone sector, we liberalized the space sector.
Yes, GDP per capita, like Neener is saying, our purchasing power is not like Somalia.
We liberalized the geospatial sector. And then there were all kinds of somewhat obscure reforms like bilateral netting. I'm sure almost nobody in the audience knows what this is. But this is a financial sector reform that is very necessary in order to create certain kinds of corporate debt market instruments. So the small steady doing of these small nuts and bolts process reforms has been a very important thing. And some of these things are now beginning to show up. So, for example, one thing that I was very much involved in is dramatically expanding our patent system. It's still ongoing. It has not finished. We're still doing it. But, in 2016, we were giving out only 9,000 patents a year. Okay. Last year, we gave out 35,000 patents a year. This year, we will do about between 50 and 60,000 patents a year. In 1.5 to 2 years' time, we will be doing 1 lakh patents a year. So, in less than 1 year, we'll have gone from 9,000 to over 1 lakh. Now, we want to be in the knowledge economy. We have to be serious about patenting. Now, this is the sorts of nuts and bolts reforms. A lot of these doesn't require some grand change. It requires going and hiring more examiners and controllers and smoothing the process in the patenting system, let's say. Or we had another reform that I was a part of, which is getting rid of these telecom regulations on the BPO ITES sector. In legal parlance, they are called other service providers, OSPs. And till 2020, there were these almost license permit Raj type reforms, requirements on them, which they had to go to the telecom ministry and send for permits and ask. And in fact, technically, work from home was actually illegal. In 2020.
How would you have managed COVID if that was illegal?
And it turned. It's quite fun to know how I actually discovered this is because of COVID. You see, when COVID happened, the telecom ministry issued a notification saying that now all of you can work from home. I have worked in government long enough to realize that there's something extremely suspicious when a ministry says that you're now allowed to work from home. So I thought we were all allowed to work anyway. So I looked up that thing and then I realized that in fact the law said that you couldn't, and in fact you had to have an EPA-BX machine in your basement in order to work from home.
What is that machine?
Exactly. What is an EPA-BX machine? It's a 1980s, 1990s machine, but you had to have one of them in your basement to work from home. Now obviously it was ridiculous. But the very fact that the ministry issued this notification tells you that the bureaucrat was signaling that this law was still in place. If somebody tells you that you can now do it for the next 8-9 months, that means what they're telling you after the 9 months these laws apply.
And you don't know what laws apply.
No, those laws were there. And while individuals may not have been influenced, but if you were a back office operator, back office offshoring group or doing ITES, it applied to you and you had to go to permissions, and it was something like 70-80% of the time of a management time of some of these BPO operators was used up keeping track of these regulations. So,
okay, let me engage him a little. So, Rajputra Aryan Indra is saying socialism is good when it is true socialism, not like India where OBC and Lalits get all benefits and JC. Okay, see, where is your true socialism? First of all, that would be my question. And if your answer is China-style socialism, so yes, in China-style socialism, you would be put in jail for saying all the things you said. And your second comment is that Gift City has 4 buildings, lol, smart city. So yes, you see, the way things are built is that you put a brick first, then you put cement, then one building comes up, then another building is started, you put bricks and cement, then another building comes up, and you see after 3 comes 4. After 4 there's a number called 5. After 5 comes 6. And that's when someday it will be 10-15 buildings, someday it will be 100 buildings. That is how maths and building construction works. Which is why Modi's big vision, etc. Vikashit Bharat is for 2047. If he had no plans, if he had just said that let's sell any random bullshit narrative and just win elections, then he would say that our Vikashit Bharat to 2024 mein hi ho jayega bhai. He said 2047 because of these procedures.
Once I discovered that, then of course I took it up with the authorities, and once your eyes have set to it, we began to do those reforms, and yes, those reforms that got liberalized, and subsequently in the years 2021 and 22, those sectors dramatically grew for 2 years because you had removed these archaic regulations. Now there are many such things that need to be further done, but I'm just pointing out to you. None of these require great genius. You don't need Nobel laureate theories or something like that. These are mostly, you can see the blockage in the system. It requires you to roll up your sleeves, climb in, figure out where in the system the blockage is, and tweak those things till that flow happens.
I think I really appreciate the effort that the government brought in external experts like you to figure out that, because you could see it with a fresh pair of eyes. If anybody was, I believe, already 20-25 years and they asked them to clean up, it's just like I'm sitting in a dirty room, right? So I would not say it's a dirty room because I'm sitting in it. Then,
to be fair, there are people inside the government, whether there are whether it's from political leaders, ministers in this government. There are also many talented civil servants, and I've had a lot of support from them from getting these reforms done. So I will not diss them. So they are also part of it. In fact, many of these things, like this patent case, I got to know because actually a joint secretary who was in charge at that time of the patent office actually brought it to my notice. So many of these reforms got done because they were brought to my notice, or we made many of these.
If companies won't wait for 20 years, why are they already investing in Vibrant Gujarat summits? Okay, summit after summit after summit after summit. Why are they waiting for it? Why aren't they going elsewhere and saying fuck you Gujarat and going away?
these changes with the help of many of them. But it's also other people outside government also who have provided lots of inputs.
Yeah.
There are lawyers, for example. I have a school friend, Rahul Mathan, who has been a big help in giving me inputs on how to make the changes. Of course, I had the guidance of both the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister, the Commerce Minister, the current Telecom and Railways Minister. Many of them give me a lot of support and ideas and recommendations based on which these changes were made.
And let's say the ease of doing business in India, right, is still not among the top 100 nations according to global indexes. What is required to make it India among the top 5 places to?
If Vietnam is becoming a superpower, what does it mean? What is Vietnam going to be able to do with its superpower? Vietnam is smaller than a football field in Gujarat.
For ease of doing business.
Look, it's an ongoing thing. Although I think you're being unfair. I think we would put ourselves much higher than outside the top 100. I would think. But anyway, I mean, all feedback is welcome, and we should say that we should neither be too depressed nor become too triumphalist. We need to take a realistic view, and there are many things that we will take feedback on. So let's say if you had come 10 years ago and said doing business in India is difficult because of the following things, one would have definitely been infrastructure.
Yeah.
And you can see right in front of your eyes, we are doing a massive rollout of
Absolutely.
So
digital infrastructure in India is world class right now. Be it
physical
UPI.
infrastructure too. I mean, the airports you use on our end will very often be better than the ones you use in
agree.
whichever country you're flying to.
Even better than the US airports.
Well, US is a very low bar, but many other places as well. Then many of the other physical infrastructure. Now we are beginning to slowly build out the urban infrastructure. Places like Mumbai, for example, have.
He casually said US is a low bar and moved on. Holy shit! This is epic trolling of USA. Okay, let's see if anyone can speak Vietnamese. Just try learning it. Vietnam can never beat India. It will never have the scale or riches. Yeah, it's even unfair to think that they can, because Singapore, Indonesia have done it, but now that India has also started doing these kinds of things, where are these going to be people left? Unless some of our bigger enemy nations or rival nations take up some stake in Vietnam, like they have in Singapore, etc. Otherwise, they can't do it. So the other thing I wanted to comment on is that even if GIFT City isn't successful, rest of Gujarat's success compensates for it. Oh no, I wanted to reply to M. Shastri's comments that GIFT City will take 20 years to show results. M. Shastri, I don't think it will take that long, because the only reason is that Gujarat's reputation is so off the charts, just as a city, as a state itself, and that state sending the Prime Minister, who everyone knows on personal basis now. UAE's king is coming to this state for that state's personal business summit. Therefore, as an extension of these reputation kind of things, I think GIFT City's progress won't be like any other financial hub or economic hub and their progress that you have seen for all this while in the history of humanity. But now since first of all Modi's reputation, Gujarat's reputation, etc., India's reputation, India's growing reputation for growing, etc., all these in place, okay, and big people coming, Elon Musk will probably come, UAE's king coming, all these things in context, in place. And also the most important is learning from all the mistakes made by all the bigger financial hubs, okay, so make them more resilient and anti-fragile, okay. Because of those things, GIFT City won't have the same gradual trajectory as all other cities take, I think.
A massive construction going on. I apologize for the dust it creates, but at some point it had to be built, and it would be inconvenient whenever we built it. But it's getting built, so the physical infrastructure is getting done. Similarly, many of the old bureaucratic hassles are one by one removing. I talked about opening up the drone sector, space sector, many of these other sectors. I specifically talked about doing reforms in the OSP sector, right patents. Right now, I'm trying to get rid of mandatory mediation in commercial courts, commercial cases. So if you read my articles in the newspapers, you will see many people are surprised that I'm in the government and I write these articles which are very critical of certain processes in the government. But there is a culture here of taking a critical view of things and debating them. And we have been given the freedom in the Prime Minister's Economic Council to take up these issues. My colleagues in the Prime Minister's Economic Council, for example, took on the statistical system and argued that, look, we need to upgrade the system. So in a sense, you can clearly see that debate.
Yeah, see, actually the things that he has the freedoms to write and criticize the government on, or on the existing laws on, it means that Modi already wants them to be changed, so he is making Sanjeev Sanyal start debates on these topics, which is why Sanjeev Sanyal is going around doing so many podcasts, because he kind of has been given less work for now. So because his narratives are also a contributor to the election campaign as well. And few days back, up until I think 1 or 2 years back, the chairman of the Statistical Advisory Council to Prime Minister was also a Bengali person, Professor Bimal Roy, who's the head of Kolkata ISI. I heard even he has been given the invitation for Ayodhya temple.
And discussion and reforms are actively encouraged, and right from the apex body like the Prime Minister's Economic Council also, you hear strong views on we need to fix this, fix that, and we are encouraged to engage with the system. So it's not just that we want to rah-rah about the economy. So we fully appreciate the feedback we are getting. We ourselves give quite a lot of negative feedback, and as a result of which, this self-reflection also, you also have some reforms get done. I'm not claiming that there aren't others to do. I mean, I would argue that the direct tax system is way too complicated, needs to be fixed, and at some point we will get it done.
But do you think countries like Dubai, Singapore, because of their small size, they're able to move very fast and able to create hubs for financial activity?
So certainly they have an advantage of being small. We have some advantage of being big. So I mean, we can sometimes mimic some of their advantages. By, for example, in the case of Gift City, we are trying to mimic some of the benefits of being an offshore financial hub. But then there are also benefits of being really big. I mean, we have a large internal market. When there is a massive shock, like say, for example, COVID, and the world begins to fall apart, and global supply chains break down, a place like Singapore can very quickly unwind. In our case, we can keep things running and we have resources and scale that provide us a certain amount of strength. So there are advantages and disadvantages. But yes, I mean, if you're small and nimble, it means that you can...
The political will can come into action really fast.
Yeah, it's a smaller system we can. But, to be fair, we also have smaller units of government in India where you can take decisions and get things done. I'll give you one example. Municipal issues. One big issue in India is municipal issues, just cleaning the city up. And you have a city like Indore, now more recently Bhopal, it just got its act together and cleaned it up. Relatively small, we have small states like Goa. I would argue that Goa has really got its act together. And if those of you who visit Goa, I have been visiting it for the last 30 years. And let me say, Goa of today, okay, it's lost some part of its old charm, but on balance, it has dramatically improved from what it used to be. As a holiday destination, it's cleaned up its act. The old, drugs and hippies image has slowly got diluted out. It's now a real high-end, high-quality destination to go to. And by world standards, by the way, I'm not just taking Indian standards. And so, we have smaller units, and they do, they can perform if there is political will, and the business elite is also has the will. They can perform.
You mentioned one example, right? Of how India's population adds. So if you have to summarize, how does India, being the largest nation by population, helps it and deters it in economic growth?
So I mean, having a very large population means also everything is large. So the problems are also large, but the opportunities are also large. It creates a massive common market. But you have to.
What does common market mean?
A common market means that the internal demand, the system, is very large. So if you produce a product, say if you're in Singapore, yes, there's some benefit, but there is no large domestic market. So you have to go out and sell it, and sometimes the world may be in a nice globalizing environment where you can easily spread yourself. There may be other circumstances where you can't. Now in India, the problem was till GST came in, we were not a common market. It was actually more difficult for Mumbai to trade with Delhi than it was for Mumbai to trade with Shanghai. Because if you just took a truck across the country, you had to be stopped at every state boundary, and different laws are there. Of course, there are lots of rent seeking and all of this. It was just a mess. Now we have a unified system called GST. I'm not saying it's perfect, but it's a dramatic improvement on whatever existed before. Now, you can think of GST as a free trade agreement India signed with itself. Now, since you said population, now you have 1.4 billion people to whom you can sell things. Similarly, they can participate. So both the demand side, but also on the supply side. You have, cluster of talent. You don't need labor. You can move them around. People can move around the country in ways you can't do. All of those things. And of course, we are building infrastructure in scale. So all of those things are possible because we are large. Now, of course, if that population is continuously growing at a very, very high pace, that complicates matters, and that has been historically a problem. But let me also say, and many people don't realize this, our birth rates have actually dramatically declined. In fact, India is no longer producing enough babies to replace itself. It may surprise people. Yes, our fertility rate is now just slightly below replacement.
Do you think we might taper up at 1.5 or 1.6 billion?
No, a little bit more than 1.5, but because we are very close to it. But let me say that our population is no longer growing because we have too many babies. It is growing now purely because we are living longer. So that is a good reason for population growth. So as a result of this, what is happening, we are now in a sweet spot for about 25 years, where there aren't too many children in the pipeline, and we haven't aged that, a large part of the population is old and beyond the working age. So we have a bulk of population now in working age, or will soon be entering the working age in the next decade or so. So we are in a sweet spot. We can deploy a large part of our population to produce things without having to spend energy on looking after children or looking after the aging. And this is happening at a time when many countries in the world are rapidly aging. Even China has now tipped over into the rapid aging stage. So this is why, when Prime Minister says Amrit Kal, it's not just about the coincidence of the next 25 years being, the 75th to the 100th year of independence. It coincides as it happens to be with our demographic peak. But we have to take advantage of it. And also remember that it also will come to an end. At the other side, we too will age. Okay. It also means we need to do some things very, very quickly. And we need to understand that it changes the dynamics of many things. There are already states in India which have already begun to age, like Kerala or Himachal shortly. We have to begin continuously change our mental dynamics for this. So there are parts of the country where you need to actually shut down schools. People don't realize this. We may have too many schools, there are not enough children in those villages and so on to participate in the schools. So we cannot be emotional about these things. We need to look at what is actually happening. And in some parts of the country, we actually have to flip it and encourage births because there are not enough children being...
Or relocate more young people.
Relocate to those places. Maybe those states have to take a view that they're happy to import more people. Or there are parts of the country, for example, in the hill states, where entire villages have been emptied out. We now need to actually find ways of populating people along the border areas to make sure that there is adequate populations living there. Other than just the military presence, you need populations living there. So there are all kinds of issues that happen as the demographic...
Yeah, Adarsh Rajput is making a great point here. I somehow disagree with the skyscraper way of development, because I know people who live in Gurgaon are the most stressful. Why don't we do it in our own way? You see, very good question, very important point you have brought up. But see, the things causing that stress are our other cultural chutiapa. Okay, getting away from the family, etc. There's nothing to be proud in your own culture. Okay. Working hours का तो एक problem है ही, but I mean everyone is working. Basically no family bonding is there around you. You are completely dependent on coffee, alcohol and cigarettes for your work, and whenever you get some weekend, you just drink out of your balls and you are passed out on Saturday night. And if you are married, go take the 2-3 vacations and go to Himachal or Singapore. That's your entire life. That can't be your entire life. This is why I'm saying that the temple economy model is such a brilliant financial discovery of mankind. It's the most underappreciated and underrated. Your life should not be just about that. Now, I am not a socialist, okay? I'm not saying that, therefore, end this. These are the rules that have been presented to us. We have to play along these rules. But at least remember that this is not the goal. The goal is the internal consumption model, okay? For example, in an absolutely theoretical, hypothetical world, let's say it's all temples all around, okay? And all we cultivate is food for our subsistence and whatever the flowers and stuff we need to donate to the temples for the worshipping of gods. Do you see how much less stressful of an economy that would be? Okay, of course, we are not going to get any economic development, any economic facility, etc. Not economic, I mean technological progress, innovation, but that is not the world we live in. But you see, there is a replacement, there is another way to do it, but it cannot be done 100%, but a balance needs to be struck between these two. But the first step towards striking a balance between these two ways of running a country, society or economy, with of course prosperity, the antidote for proposed for this sort of a lifestyle in Gurgaon presented by socialists and communists is therefore kick out these companies. We will just love each other based on nothing. Okay, now that can't happen. It needs culture to sustain that, which now China is realizing, which UAE has already realized, etc. But in order for that awareness to come, in order for that balance to be struck, first the awareness needs to be there. Okay, that what is the replacement? What were our culture's responses or better ideas that were there before this thing happened? Like that Bengali pride guy was once saying that if we don't learn English, how will we converse with the entire world and how will we do business together? अरे भाई, सेल्यूकस निकेटर चंद्रगुप्ता मौर्य को अपना बेटी दे दिया, वो क्या इंग्लिश जान के बैठा था? Everyone was trading with everyone. No one needed English. Okay, you need very specific language knowledge for doing business with specific people, etc. But that is not a language debate I'm getting into at the moment. But I'm saying that we don't know how we were doing. Most of us, most Indians, that is, they don't even know what was India doing before the British came here or before the Mughals came here, and therefore they don't know what solutions might be there in our own history. तो डीकोलोनियलिटी का नाम बोलूंगा, बोलोगे टी शर्ट पहनना बंद कर दो, माइक यूज करना बंद कर दो. डीकोलोनियलिटी का मतलब ये है भाई, अपना हिस्ट्री से खोद के देखो क्या है, क्या सोल्यूशन हो सकता है, देखो, अगर नहीं मिले देन मूव ऑन. आई वांट टू टेल यू गाइस दिस स्टोरी once again. It's a famous thing said by Ben Shapiro. I don't think he came up with it, but he had said a great story basically describing a difference between conservatives and progressives. Okay, so let's say one progressive and conservative is walking in a forest and they see a random fence in front of them, okay, in a jungle, inside a forest. The progressive goes and says, why is this fence here? It's hampering our progress, it's blocking our way. Immediately take it out and throw it away. The conservative says that, first let's have a discussion. We don't know why this fence is here. Someone put it here. Someone had some reason to put that fence here. Maybe we at the moment don't know. Maybe someone else around the fence knew why this fence was here. Let's have a discussion. Let's find out why the fuck that fence is here. Then we will see. We'll come to a conclusion as a society that whether this fence is required today or not. And if not, then we can throw away the fence. But just because a fence is here, let's not throw it away.
Fix flips.
You mentioned briefly about the Amrit Kal, the next 25 years could be again where India becomes Sone ki Chidiya. Right. What are the factors, like the global factors? So India is working hard. The Prime Minister, you are working hard. The population is working hard. We as entrepreneurs and investors are working hard. But what are the global factors? Because timing has to coincide for a lot of things for that to happen. If we remember and recall, you are a historian as well, right? So India became the trade route during the Chandragupta.
So look, we have historically been a very major part of the world economy. And it's not for nothing that the Indian Ocean is called the Indian Ocean. It's named after a country. It's the only ocean in the world named after a country. The reason for that is that Indian merchants, mariners, etc., were sailing all over the world trading, and we were the engine of world growth. In fact, till about 1,000 years ago, 1/3 of the world's economy was India. Then that number kept declining.
And you see that dumb communist whose YouTube channel on whose video on Sanjeev Sanyal we had reacted, he was saying that if India was so great, why didn't its GDP growth rate, why didn't its GDP grow further during Chanakya's era or pre-Mughal era or even in the Mughal era? Because there was no USA printing dollars every day, incessantly. Without dollars, that mad inflation and growth rate does not happen.
Through the centuries, through the Mughal period, even though many people think of that as a golden period, let me say that even during that period, our share of world economy was declining. In fact, China went past us at about 1500. And then it kept declining. But even then, we were a very, very large part of the world economy till about 1820. And then it just drops off as the colonial experience, deindustrializes India. But interestingly, it will shock people to know that our share of world GDP was around about 4% at independence. But after independence, also it kept declining. So this is the thing that you have to understand how we let ourselves down in the first 50 years of independence. For half a century, our share of world GDP declined. So by the time we were liberalizing our economy in the early 90s, the share of world GDP had dropped a little bit below 2% of GDP. So at independence, we are 4%, down to little less than 2% when we begin to liberalize the economy. Then since then, it has slowly been drifting up. And we are actually now just a little bit above about 4-5% of GDP, world GDP, which actually brings us back to where we were at independence. That's all we have done in the last 30 years of growth. We've just gone back to where we were. And that is also roughly true of our position in the world in per capita terms also. We are just about where we were. We are still a very poor country. But as proportion of world incomes, we have basically regained our place where we were at independence. Of course, the rest of the world had gone far ahead. We have begun to now catch up. From here on, we are actually now getting into the zone where we are climbing the stairs. So, as you yourself pointed out, we are now the world's 5th largest economy in dollar terms, US dollar terms, nominal. In purchasing power terms, which is if you adjust for the fact that different things are cost differently in different parts of the world, we are already the world's 3rd largest economy. Now, in dollar terms, we will go past Germany in about 18 months to 2 years' time. In 3 to 3.5 years' time, we will go past Japan. Then we will be, however you measure it, the world's 3rd largest economy. This doesn't mean that everything has been solved. We will still be quite a poor country because we have the 3rd largest economy, but we have the largest population. So once you divide one by the other, we are still a lot poorer than Western countries, but much better than before. And even with and even just having size has some benefits. For just the sheer size of the economy means that we can negotiate with the rest of the world in a very different way. Our place in the world is different.
Our passports will become more powerful.
Yes. Also, the revenues the government is raising goes up. So even if we are doing transfers to the very poor, let's say, our ability to do it goes up. Our ability to create infrastructure goes up. So all of this is being generated by that same growth engine that is expanding the economy. So we have to keep this going. No messing with this. And without doing what we do
with this. Adarsh put another great point that people are into so many temporary enjoyments. For a few hours, it gives them joy, etc. Yes. And see, the solution, antidote to this is culture, religion, faith, etc., family values. But that cannot be conjured up magically by any politician or any political party or because of atheism, communism, socialism. All these things were historically rooted in cultural and religious teachings. For example, I don't know if you have seen our Manusmriti live stream. I don't think you were our viewer back then. So we basically read out and discussed the entire Arya Samaji Manusmriti. Okay, I went to Amazon and decided to buy the Manusmriti. The first one I found was this one only. But later on I found out that it's basically translated by a person who was an Arya Samaji. So it's pretty controversial among traditionalists. But why it's controversial is that whatever were the casteist statements, they were taken off this Manusmriti, okay, because of very explained reasons. They gave out 7 tests to judge whether a shloka is seems like a later interpolation or not. But based on that, I found that some shlokas even then seemed absolutely to make no sense, disagreed with something said in the previous page, and could have been ignored nonetheless based on those 7 principles only. But my point is that if you read the Manusmriti with a curious heart and an honest mind, and don't read it just to debunk it or find out the controversial phrases, you will learn so many beautiful things from Manusmriti, okay? We have gone through it entirely. We have learned so many things that we can pursue and apply today in our lives, but also that so many of our existing values already come directly from Manusmriti, okay? तो हमारा जो सब कल्चरल आइकॉन्स है, स्ट्रक्चर्स है, सब कुछ को हम लात मारेंगे या फिर पूरी तरह से एम्ब्रेस कर लेंगे, और उनमें अगर कुछ सचमुच में ख़राब चीज़ें हैं बेस्ड ऑन द टाइम्स इट वाज रिटन, तो उसको भी हम फॉलो करने लगेंगे. ऐसे नहीं होगा. यू हैव टू यूज योर कॉमन सेंस एट सम पॉइंट इन योर लाइफ. ओके, डोंट होप फॉर दिस 100% agreement mentality. Okay, just yesterday, of course, I did not find the need to debate Ankit Shah on this, but I absolutely 100% disagree with his view on street dogs. It does not matter. I'm not listening to Ankit Shah for his views on animal rights. I'm listening to Ankit Shah for his views on finance and the world of finance. तो क्या है? तो मनुस्मृति पढ़ो, इतना अच्छा चीज़ें सीखने को मिलेगा. बस तुम सामने कोई लोअर कास्ट आदमी मिले तो उसको गाली मत दे देना क्योंकि तुमने मनुस्मृति में पढ़ा है.
Did blow up our banks or do anything which in any way interferes with macroeconomic stability. This is a compounding process, and those of you who know compounding, I'm sure you learned compound interest rates in class 8. The key thing, if you experiment with compounding, you will learn is that compounding process really gathers pace over time. So it's really about maintaining that. This year, for example, we will grow at about 7%. Now that is the world's fastest growing growth rate. But in this 1 year, 7% doesn't matter. Now you do this 7% for a few more years. Maybe the world economy will be slightly better off a few years from. We may even do 8%. Maybe 1 year we'll get lucky and do 9%. But it's not about that any 1 year. Whether it's 7% or 9% is not the point. The point is it getting compounded? Every year are we just doing it? And so do this over 25 years and you'll be surprised how dramatically the thing goes off. I mean, even China, everybody's saying, it's now the world's second largest economy. It's now competing with the US and all that. All of this is about compounding.
I think US is about $40 trillion. China is at...
So in USD terms, nominal, the US is about $25 trillion economy. The China is somewhere about $18-19 trillion economy.
Not very far behind.
Yeah, I mean, it's in the same scale. It's a little bit behind, but it's in the same scale. In PPTP terms, by the way, China is already bigger. So, China is a serious player, but it has got here, let me also clarify, through the same process of compounding. In 1990, they were just a little bit larger than us as an economy. We have since the liberalization of the 90s, we have grown actually rather well. In fact, I would say for any large economy, probably second only to China itself. But China has grown by a few percentage points higher. And that compounding effect means that they are in a totally different place from us. So now that has just now flipped. Last year, this year. We are now growing a few percentage points higher than them.
That is the CCP MOU with Congress Party was one of the contributors to this.
All that is needed. Just compound this for a few years. And certainly if you do it for 25 years, a totally different thing. But even if you did it to the end of this decade, we will be rapidly catching up.
And China also follows a different version of socialism.
Well, firstly, their economy is totally not socialistic, except for the idea of political control at the very top. So they have got a mixed bag. And since they began to do their economic reforms much before us. They started in 1978. And in the initial years, when you had Deng Xiaoping and others, this was done very much, even though state control was used, but there was a sense that, economic efficiency, entrepreneurship, risk-taking, etc. shouldn't be interfered with. In the last few years, there has been some change in the dynamics of it, and you may have seen that the central government of China has gone back to being much more interventionist. And that is, by the way, you can see the effect of that already. Yes. Yeah, I mean, their growth has slowed down. They are having their own problems in their banks. Some of their top entrepreneurs, Jack Ma, for example, has simply disappeared from the front pages. So, the fact that in the last few years they've tried to go back in some way has already showed you the price you have to pay for unnecessary top-down control.
And this is kind of in line with the Ankit Shahi principles as well, that China is also looking to decrease its manufacturing power and not be just the manufacturing hub of the world. I guess a few moments back that trolling guy was also saying this, that we are not manufacturing, or we were never a manufacturing hub. So kahe ka GDP etc. Kahe ka economic prowess. Manufacturing is not the end all be all for an economic giant. Okay, there are other things to do as well, but China is getting back towards internal consumption, which is why it is reviving its temples and cultures. Without those things, you don't have anything to purchase. Basically, internal consumption cannot be just dependent on alcohol. And interestingly, by the way, to digress a little, Gujarat, alcohol is banned in Gujarat, and it's such a reputed state for economics. And Bengal's almost sole tax contributor is alcohol consumption.
Between 2010 to 2015, China was the place where Indian businessmen were going for imports to learn manufacturing.
No, look, China is a serious player in the world economy. Even today, we may have our geopolitical frictions with them or whatever. But we can't wish them away. I mean, we still import large amounts of components from them. And
even after the Make in India initiative that
yes, even with that, and will continue to be for a while. Of course, there are areas where they do obvious dumping, etc. So we will protect certain parts of our economy from dumping and unfair practices. But to say that we can wish away China is, we can't. We may have our differences with them, but we will still trade with them, as indeed does the US. I mean, US has even bigger geopolitical concerns about China, and they still trade with them, and so does Japan. So it's not that we can wish them away, but yes, whatever we do, we have to do with our eyes open.
And what about, do you think, can India, if you have ever, thought it or given serious thought to it, that can India be a $20 trillion economy at some point in time in future?
Look, the whole game is about compounding. So, you choose the growth rate we think we can do and compound it. So, if I'm not...
I dislike this question very much, that can India be a $20 trillion economy? And that is the other thing, one of the things I disagree with Abhijit Chavda as well, that he keeps on harping this random arbitrary idea of $10 trillion economy. $10 trillion economy is predicated on by when we do it and what are the GDPs of our competitors. You cannot randomly just become a $20 trillion economy and $10 trillion economy 50 years down the line and think it will mean the same thing. Inflation ka kya hoga? Purchasing power ka kya hoga? That is more important, not a random $10 trillion or $20 trillion economy. Okay, Adarsh Rajput is saying, so Mandir ecosystem and teaching of all Indic principles, yes, will make a change. But we have to do it from micro level, very micro level, and have to add every principle in every department from school, college, etc. Yes. I think it's a mixture of a collaboration between the civil society and the government. The government will have to do these things, reclamation of temples, etc. That will create a narrative, and the civil society will feel the interest to do these things. Maybe after criticizing Modi or the government, saying that they are not doing these things enough, so we must do it. So it will be a joint collaboration.
Not mistaken, if you take a PPP perspective of things, we are already a $12 trillion economy. So it is the case that we can get there. If exchange rates were more PPP driven, then we would get there. But if you compound it over a period of time, yes, absolutely, it's something we can aspire to. But it's not like it's some God-given certainty. It requires that over a period of an entire generation, we put in that effort.
And because what I'm saying that number, because at that number, imagine a $20 trillion economy with 2 billion population.
First of all, I don't think we'll ever have a 2 billion population. As I said, we are not producing enough children already to be able to sustain the current population. So while our population may go up a little bit more because of longevity growth, population will probably max out at 1.6 and then very rapidly then begin to decline. Because, as I said, our birth rates are in fact now no longer at replacement rates.
But the important thing that I'm trying to get to is the income of a common man.
Basically, guys, in our lifetimes, we will see the peak of India's prowess, and by the time we are dying, let's say in our 90s, or if we live to 100, etc., India's decline will also again start because of our fertility rate decline, possibly.
By that time, just dividing the GDP by the population will be like $10,000 in the USD.
So I think we will reach $10,000, but not with the population benefit. I keep coming back to this, and I want to drill it into people's heads, because there is this impression that we will be young forever. No, we have 25 years to do it. Whatever we want to do, this is it.
Okay.
After that, we too age. Okay, number one. And our population will not be growing, and at some point it will be declining. Well before somewhere in the 2050s, and I'm hoping to be still around at that time, it will begin to decline. So don't count on population being the bulwark of prosperity into the future.
Wow, so that's why you're always coming back to that. We have only 25 years to
Yes, this demographic thing lasts 25 years. Make it during this time. It is now.
What are we doing in 2023 and 2024 right now on the policy level, on implementation level, when there's almost a global recession triggered by printing money in the US, 2 wars at the first time in the history of the world after the World War II?
That's not true. There have been many wars.
But at this scale?
Yes, there, Vietnam War, this war, there have been many wars.
But these are 2 wars going together.
Well, there were many wars, I can assure you. If you go back and look at the 60s and 70s, there were many wars going on, and there have been since then too. And the war more recently in Afghanistan and Iraq was going on. So the world has always had wars, but yes, Right now we have two wars. They are certainly unhappy things, and they affect oil prices and other things that we depend on.
And China is almost like a threat to us, and our neighboring nations like Sri Lanka has gone bust, like Pakistan has gone bust.
Absolutely. So, if we had followed those kinds of the kinds of policies our US academics were telling us to do, we would have also been in Sri Lanka's position. Let me tell you this. So thankfully we did not do that. But right now, what our game is, look, first of all, things are going great here right now domestically.
Okay. And what do you mean by it? Let's take some anecdotes.
So, for example, if you look at the latest number that came out just now for the second quarter, which is the July to September quarter of the financial year, you can see that we grew by 7.6% year on year. That's a massive real growth. In nominal terms, it's even higher. And then you also had, the industrial sector in particular, the construction sector is growing. So these are solid numbers coming through, and it is happening without any help from exports, because exports are actually mostly flat. They had grown in the previous year, particularly services, but now they are flat. So without the benefit of a global environment that is expanding, we are managing to hit, for the full year, we probably hit something like 7%. That's a really solid growth rate. Easily makes us the fastest growing economy in the world. And very importantly, we are doing this without stressing the macros of this economy. So there is no spike in overall inflation. Yeah, tomato prices may go up and come down, but there is no sustained inflation. Similarly, our external accounts, our current account, our trade balance, etc., they're not blowing up in any which way. We have $600 billion in foreign exchange reserves. So the external sector is not under stress. Our banks, as we have discussed before, they are in decent shape. So we are doing this 7%. It's like we are jogging and doing the 7%. We may now get an opportunity at some point in the next few years where, let's say, the world is in a better place. Let's say they'll be cutting interest rates, the world will be growing, and so on. In those circumstances, we can do 8% plus growth rates. But I wouldn't try to do it right now. My most important thing right now is to make sure that we continue to build out the infrastructure. We keep doing these reforms. I mentioned all these thousands of small reforms we need to do to make ourselves more efficient. Get our private sector and multinationals who want to move to India to build capacities, and then wait for that boom period in the world economy, then we will make hay. Meanwhile, take advantage of the fact that we are a large domestic economy and build out that capacity.
And the last question is, what percentage of your time or the entire economic advisory time goes into thinking about startups, right? That
some part of our time, yes.
I just want to highlight that the US is what it is today, and what has role played. The four largest companies in the US today are all startups of their generation: Apple, Google, Microsoft, and Amazon. Right? So is India thinking of building?
Absolutely, we are fully. It has required us almost a generation since the 1991 reforms to create a culture which is risk-taking, innovation. If you go to top universities today and you ask kids, what do you want to do? That has changed. When I was there, they either wanted to go abroad or they wanted to write UPSC. Now, the brightest kids want to do a startup. So there has been a major change in risk-taking. And when I say startups, I don't mean only, some guy doing some technology thing. Even somebody doing something like what you are doing is a startup. Somebody wants to go and take a risk in a completely different field, want to be a sports person or wants to be a writer. That's also a startup of a type. So I am talking about the culture of risk-taking. And that has definitely come back in India. I mean, there is a real energy that you can feel when you go out and meet young people trying to do all kinds of things. And I spend some time thinking about it. Look, some of the problems I need to solve are generic to everybody. Startups are not. I mean, improving the patenting system of the system of India is good for startups. It's good for non-startup existing companies. But they have specific problems. For example, lots of problems relating to taxation. For example, angel tax. We try and keep fixing them. I won't say they get fixed in one shot. We'll keep doing it. But what I want to say is, this government has its ears open. We see the problems arise, we fix them, then another set of problems arise, we'll keep fixing them. This will keep going on, but what really matters is that we really want this innovation-driven economy that sort of really drives India. And it is in some ways, this is what our real history is. If you go back and look at our very long history, India's economy has been an economy of startups and innovation. We are the people who explored across the Indian Ocean. We sent merchants exploring to, the Middle East. We had them going all the way through Southeast Asia, all the way through Japan and China and Korea. We have a long history of risk-taking and exploration. And of course, we have intellectual risk-taking in terms of mathematics and medicine and so on. So we are a culture which is naturally risk-takers. We are open-minded. Hinduism is very much about searching for the truth. It's not about telling you what the truth is. So this culture of risk-taking is very much in our blood. And finally, we, after having let ourselves down for half a century after independence, sadly, finally we have built back that culture. And that confidence that you're seeing in India today comes from having built back that culture of risk-taking.
Thank you so much, sir. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I'm keeping some part of our questions for our second conversation.
I look forward.
Oh, so there will be a second part in this conversation. So this is just one podcast. Another podcast will happen, will release from this guy. That's fun to know. Okay, some great comments have come. Let's discuss this. After that, we will go home. By the time we get rich, mature economy might find out how to grow. Japan is looking at growth now after 2 decades of stagnation and low birth rates. Yes, and they are going to be the first one to dump the US Treasury bonds. This birth rate problem needs a serious solution. How to keep stable birth rate is something we need to seriously deliberate, or else we will be like Italy or Japan, who aren't even producing babies. Yes, guys, we have to learn from the people who are doing it. Israel, what are they doing right? Why is there economic prowess, technological innovation, and high birth rates? What have they done to shape the narrative of their country that they think it's not just even a duty. You can't have 2-3 kids just because of a sense of duty. You can't have 2-3 kids without being in love with your partner, okay? You can't have 2-3 kids just because your parents ask you to do so. You can't have 2-3 kids just because your country needs it. You will end up having 2-3 kids only and only if you are in love. And even today, I know communist couples in their late 30s, 40s, who even today are having 2 kids because they are actually in love. So, instead of incentivizing, I think the first and most primary effort that we people who are aware of these problems is that we can how we can contribute is debunk and destroy the idea of disincentivizing having kids. That the threat of the narratives against having kids, destroying them are more important than explaining to people that why you should in fact have kids. Okay, I think the should comes naturally. You have you got married, you love that person, why not have kids? Why not teach them the great things you know in your life? Why not have a son or daughter who will watch the same sports or same movies, listening to the same music as you do? I think that's a very natural tendency. ये नेचुरल टेंडेंसी का माँ का भोसड़ा बनाया है जो नैरेटिव ने, वो नैरेटिव को हम लोगों को तोड़ना होगा. आई थिंक द इंसेंटिव विल fall into place by on its own. Adarsh Rajput is saying how mandir system will be established in every society because we have become greedy, we don't care much, we only talk, execute less. Yeah. So many differences within our community. Yeah, that will happen with time with more of these. The major contribution for that will be absolutely YouTube. Videos of these Hindutvadi speakers and YouTubers, their views becoming more and more popular, viral, etc. And based on that, some movies will start happening. After that, these changes will take place. You are inspiring me to start my own podcast and other topic. Absolutely, yes. This is what I've been saying from the first day, that how can we do something? I'm always saying that do a YouTube channel or run an Instagram channel. उसके अलावा कोई उपाय है नहीं हमारे पास. Hindus need to break the taboo of having max 2 kids. You can have more too, yes. Having kids is one of the... एक मिनट, ओह मेरा एक इमोजी ऊपर आया गया है, therefore I can't see your comment. Rights या फिर debts mentioned in our shastras, right? I'm not sure. I've heard things kind of like that, yes. Good stream, Dada. Oh, thank you. Good night. Yeah. Good night then, guys. It was a great live stream. We learned a lot of new things. Good night.